Chapter 2140. Amidst the sea of flowers, the two hugged each other tightly. Yi Xian gazed at the sunset in the distance, his right hand gently caressing Little Nine's back. The paper window between him and Little Nine had finally been pierced through. He had come this time to make a promise to the women he loved. After a long time, Yi Xian and Little Nine left. Little Nine returned to the country of Jiang, while Yi Xian returned to Tsanglan Academy. Mount Azure Billow. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, what did Little Nine say to you before we parted? She actually made you smile so lewdly." Yi Xian said indifferently, "None of your business." Xiao Ta. Yi Xian walked up to Nan Lidian, who looked up at Yi Xian. "I know I was wrong." Yi Xian smiled. "Get up first." Nan Lidian hesitated for a moment, then stood up. Yi Xian sized Nan Lidian up. "You like the sword?" Nan Lidian nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said, "What is your purpose in learning the sword?" Nan Lidian looked straight at Yi Xian. "My purpose is whatever you want me to do." Yi Xian's expression froze, then he shook his head with a smile. "How about this? You will be our Tsanglan Academy's guardian from now on, okay?" Nan Lidian nodded. "Okay." Yi Xian flicked his finger, and a ray of white light disappeared into Nan Litian's forehead. Boom. Nan Litian's body trembled slightly, and a lot of information appeared in his mind. Yi Xian said, "This is a Sword Dao inheritance. From today onwards, you will be Tsanglan Academy's guardian." With that he turned and left. At the entrance of the palace, Nan Lidian was silent for a long time, then he turned and left. In the distance, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, aren't you afraid that she will go back on her words?" Yi Xian smiled. "After she cultivates my Sword Dao, she will revere me like a god." With that he vanished from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was already in Tuoba Yan's palace. Tuoba Yan stood quietly at the entrance of the palace's great hall. He was still dressed in a dragon robe. His figure was graceful and his face was beautiful. At this moment, Tuoba Yan turned to look at Yi Xian and rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "I thought you weren't coming back." Yi Xian laughed and said, "How could that be?" As he spoke, he walked over to Tuoba Yan and wrapped his arms around Tuoba Yan's waist. Tuoba Yan buried his head in Yi Xian's chest and said softly, "It's good that you're back." Yi Xian gently caressed Tuoba Yan's silky hair. The two of them hugged each other quietly and did nothing. In the evening, Yi Xian sat in front of the stone steps. He raised his head and looked at the distant sky. The sky was filled with stars, deep and distant. Tuoba Yan rested her head on Yi Xian's shoulder. Yi Xian suddenly lowered his head to look at Tuoba Yan and said with a smile, "This kind of peaceful life is actually quite good." Tuoba Yan looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "What right do you have to talk about peace when you haven't experienced the peak?" Yi Xian roared with laughter. "That's true. A peaceful life? If a person pursues peace when they haven't experienced the peak, then they would be forced to seek peace instead of pursuing it. Even people like his father and the others are still pursuing it, so what right do I have to talk about peace? If I don't work hard now, then one day if a great figure suddenly dislikes Azure Prefecture and farts casually, then wouldn't Azure Prefecture be gone? Peace is a form of helplessness most of the time. Work hard." Yi Xian took a deep breath and said, "Yan, I'm going to the mystic world. Are you coming with me?" Tuoba Yan shook his head. "I'll stay here. The outside world is too big and I'm not used to it." Yi Xian looked at Tuoba Yan and said with a smile, "All right." In any case, he had the green profound sword, so returning to Azure Prefecture was just a matter of an instant. Tuoba Yan suddenly said, "Are we leaving now?" Yi Xian roared with laughter. "How could that be possible?" As he spoke, he brought Tuoba Yan along and vanished on the spot. At the same time, he tossed Xiao Ta into the depths of the starry sky. Xiao Ta was speechless. 10 days later, Yi Xian left Azure Prefecture. In the starry sky, Yi Xian opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared within it. After Yi Xian entered Xiao Ta, he started to devour the hearts of the universe that the immortal treasure pavilion had given him. There was a 6th-level heart of the universe amongst the hearts of the universe that the immortal treasure pavilion had given him. It wasn't long before Yi Xian devoured all the remaining hearts of the universe. At this moment, his cultivation was equivalent to the 5th level of the cosmic heart realm. His strength had increased by a lot, especially the green profound sword. After devouring the souls of the demon sect's experts, the green profound sword had also greatly improved. Of course he couldn't ignore Xiao Ta now. The current Xiao Ta was also very fierce. One person, one tower, one sword. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, are we going to the profound world now?" Yi Xian shook his head. I still have to go see an old friend. Xiao Ta said, Is it a woman? Yi Xian said angrily, None of your business. As he spoke, he disappeared on the spot. Before long, Yi Xian arrived in the nine-dimensional universe, the Undying Emperor clan. As for this Undying Emperor clan that had once fought to the death for Yi Xian, Yi Xian naturally had never forgotten them. In a small hall somewhere, Yi Xian and Higashi Yasushi sat opposite each other. Higashi Yasushi looked at Yi Xian. I thought you wouldn't come back. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This is my home. The Undying Emperor clan was his mother's home. Naturally, it was also Yi Xian's home. After a moment of silence, Higashi Yasushi said, When are you leaving? Yi Xian smiled. Immediately. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a storage ring slowly floated in front of Higashi Yasushi. Clan leader, there are some star veins and some cultivation resources in this storage ring. There are also some inheritances that are helpful to the Undying Emperor clan. Higashi Yasushi looked at the storage ring. We feel like we're leeches. We rely on you for everything. Yi Xian shook his head. We're family. There's no need to say this. If I have it, I'll give it to the Undying Emperor clan. If I don't, there's nothing I can do. After a moment of silence, Higashi Yasushi put away the storage ring and said, All right. Yi Xian stood up and was about to leave. At this moment, as if he thought of something, he suddenly asked, Clan leader, the strand of sword chi that I left behind, has anyone broken it? Higashi Yasushi shook her head. No one. Yi Xian smiled. Do you want me to make it weaker? Higashi Yasushi shook her head. No need. It's better if it's a little difficult. Yi Xian smiled. Then clan leader, I'll be leaving. Higashi Yasushi nodded. Yi Xian turned and disappeared. Inside the palace, Higashi Yasushi looked at the storage ring in front of her. After a moment of silence, she shook her head and smiled. This little guy. In the air above the Undying Emperor clan, Yi Xian looked at the strand of sword chi that he left behind and smiled. Xiao Ta, do you think there's anyone who can break through my strand of sword chi in the future? Xiao Ta said, Definitely. Yi Xian was a little curious. What do you mean? Xiao Ta said, Young lord, you don't seem very powerful now. Your strand of sword chi doesn't have that much of a deterrent force. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta said again, Of course, if someone can break it, it means that a legend has begun. Yi Xian laughed, turned around and turned into a sword light, disappearing into the horizon. Xian world. Yi Xian's target this time was the Xian realm, because Southeast had given him so, he directly used the Azure Profound Sword to teleport to the Xian world. As soon as he arrived in the Xian world, a middle-aged man appeared in front of him. This person was one of the four gods, the Left Territory Guard. The Left Territory Guard bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Young lord, you've been waiting for a long time. Yi Xian smiled. Introduce the Xian world to me. The Left Territory Guard nodded. Young lord, follow me. With that, he led Yi Xian into the distance. On the way, the Left Territory Guard said, The Xian world was opened by the mistress. There are 4 departments. The first is our 4 gods temple. The 4 temple masters are me, the Right Heavenly Dharma Temple Master, Shen Weijin Temple Master, and Nan Weiyang Temple Master. Under us, there are the 8 great pavilions. The 8 great pavilions have 8 pavilion masters. 4 of them are civil and 4 of them are martial. They deal with the internal affairs of the Xian world. Under the 8 pavilions there are 16 sections. These 16 sects are mainly responsible for implementing some of the policies set by the 8 pavilions. Yi Xian smiled. What rights do I have? The Left Territory Guard shook his head and smiled. Young lord, the entire Xian world is yours. Yi Xian blinked. You'll listen to everything I say, right? The Left Territory Guard nodded. Of course. Yi Xian seemed to think of something and suddenly asked, Is that Yang Yan still around? He hadn't forgotten about Yang Yan and Xiao Jun. He wouldn't believe that Xiao Jun didn't have someone instructing her to do that. The Left Territory Guard said, Young lord, don't worry. Although the mistress didn't kill her, she definitely wouldn't dare to have evil intentions towards you. Yi Xian smiled. She's mother's adopted daughter? The Left Territory Guard nodded. The reason why she has evil intentions towards you is because she wants the position of young lord. Yi Xian smiled. Let's not talk about her anymore. I still have many things to ask you. Let's talk somewhere else. The Left Territory Guard smiled. Young lord, if you have any questions, you'll have to wait. Yi Xian was puzzled. What's wrong? The Left Territory Guard said, The mistress left something for you. Yi Xian was struck dumb. Then he said, You left something for me? The Left Territory Guard nodded. Yes. Young lord, follow me. With that he turned and left. Yi Xian hurried to follow her. He had to admit that he was a little curious and expectant. What would his mother leave for him? Under the left territory guard's lead, Yi Xian came to a small hall. Not long after he came to a stone door. The left territory guard bowed slightly. Young lord, go in yourself. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. With that he took 2 steps forward. The stone door suddenly opened automatically. After Yi Xian entered the stone door, it closed automatically. Yi Xian was stunned. In front of him there were 3 swords. The 3 swords were very, very ordinary. They were just ordinary iron swords. But, these 3 swords all contained a strand of sword chi. And he was very familiar with this sword chi. It was his father's sword chi. Moreover, this sword chi was different from the sword chi he obtained before. These 3 strands of sword chi all had the aura of a sword spirit. That demon sect leader little demon didn't even have the strength to fight back in front of this sword chi. 3 strands of his father's sword chi. Yi Xian's heart warmed slightly. He knew that his mother must have found a way to get it. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He put away the 3 swords. He looked not far away. When he saw something he was stunned. P.S. Everyone said that a lot of people would disappear while I was writing. It's not that I don't want to, but if I give these people an ending, it will take up a certain amount of space. If I write like this, everyone will think that I'm in the water. There are many, many people. Jin Zizai little 9 the 2nd floor's god, the 3rd floor, the 9th floor. Xiao Dao Dao Yi Mu Xiao Dao Amu Xiong Ho Yen Bianshan little air. Many, many people. If I explain to each of them, don't scold me to death. However, I will still slow down the pace and properly end the book. Chapter 2141. Not far in front of him there was a battle armor. The battle armor was made up of scales. It was completely black and emitted a cold glow. The moment he saw the battle armor, Yi Xian was excited. Area scales. Those were area scales. Yi Xian quickly walked over and gently touched the battle armor. As soon as he touched it, the battle armor turned into a black light and entered his body. Boom. Yi Xian's body trembled violently. The next moment, a thin layer of battle armor appeared around his body. After wearing the battle armor, it was as if it was perfectly integrated with his body. He didn't feel anything at all. Yi Xian slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force quickly gathered in his right arm. Looking at his right hand, Yi Xian's expression changed. He realized that his right hand actually possessed endless power. Area's power? Yi Xian was a little confused. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, this battle armor was made from Area's scales." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Did mother peel off Area's skin?" Xiao Ta said, "How is that possible? This should have fallen off after Area shed her skin." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Shed her skin?" Xiao Ta said, "Yes. Every time Area leveled up, she would change her skin and scales. These scales on your body should be the scales that she didn't want after she shed her skin. I just don't know when she changed her scales. If it's just recently, then these scales are really awesome. Of course, even if it's before, it's still very scary." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and with a thought, the green profound sword directly slashed at his body. A spark sputtered from his body. Yi Xian looked at his chest. On the scale armor on his chest, there was a shallow sword mark, but it quickly healed itself. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth slightly lifted. Awesome. Area is still awesome. Although he didn't use his full strength in that slash just now, that was the green profound sword. Of course, it didn't mean that the green profound sword was useless. In fact, whether it was Xiao Ta or the battle armor, the green profound sword could break them. It just wouldn't be that easy. In fact, the most terrifying thing about the scale armor wasn't its defense, but the powerful strength it contained. That strength was definitely related to Area. At this moment he suddenly realized that Area's body was also a treasure. Meanwhile, Tiny Pagoda suddenly said, "Young master, there's a spatial ring before you." Yi Xian looked in front of him. There was a black ring where the armor used to be. The ring looked a little weird. It was shaped like a monster, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as if it was going to swallow someone. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He picked up the storage ring and examined it carefully. Soon he discovered that there were 2 words on the ring. Mysterious ring. Of the ring? Yi Xian scanned it with his divine sense, and he noticed that it was a normal ring. It was an abstruse ring. Yi Xian looked at the ring again and then he said, "Abstruse ring? Xiao Ta, what ring do you think it is?" Xiao Ta fell silent for a moment and then he said, "There's nothing inside, so it means that it's a ring that symbolizes identity." Yi Xian frowned. A ring that symbolizes identity. Symbolizes the identity of the young master of the dark world? That shouldn't be the case. I'm already the young master of the dark world. Isn't it unnecessary for me to keep this ring? Xiao Ta said casually, perhaps it symbolizes another identity. Yi Xian and Xiao Ta were stunned when they heard this. Symbolizes another identity. Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. Could it be that I have another identity? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, young master, I think that you're going to walk further and further down the path of King Kaoshan. Yi Xian. Xiao Ta continued, although Mistress's strength isn't particularly powerful, she has master by her side. Moreover, Mistress's IQ is extraordinary. She just has to make use of it a little and she'll be able to create many powerful forces. My goodness, previously you relied on father and sister, and now you have to rely on mother. I dare to swear on Master's life that Mistress must have created a force that's even more powerful than the abstruse world. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Mother? Xiao Ta said in a low voice, young master, what do you think? Yi Xian put away the abstruse world and said with a smile, I naturally can't refuse mother's kind intentions, but I still have to rely on myself. These were his heartfelt words. Rather than relying on sister, father, or mother, he might as well rely on himself. His own strength was the way of the king. Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts. He looked around and after making sure that he didn't miss anything, he turned around and left. After coming out, Yi Xian saw the left realm secretary. The left realm secretary bowed slightly, young master. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, how many hearts of the universe do we have? The left realm secretary smiled and said, young master needs these hearts of the universe? Yi Xian nodded. The left realm secretary thought for a moment and then said, I haven't paid attention to it, but I can check it immediately. After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. Yi Xian walked out of the main hall, and he glanced at the distant horizon, where several white clouds were floating. Abstruse world. Yi Xian smiled slightly, this was his own world. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly waved his right hand, and Xin Zhao and the other demon beasts were released. At this moment, Xin Zhao had reached the 5th level of the Eternity Heart Realm. It had to be said that this speed was quite terrifying. Of course, it was also related to the star veins that Xiao Ta had given her. Moreover, Yi Xian had given her some hearts of the universe to devour. Xin Zhao glanced at Yi Xian and then said, young master, do you have any instructions for me? Yi Xian was slightly stunned and then he said, young master? Xin Zhao blinked, you are my young master. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta suddenly said, good heavens, this woman is really smart. She directly became young master. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. How could he not understand what Xin Zhao meant? Xin Zhao obviously wanted to keep following him. Actually, this was normal. After all, what realm was Xin Zhao at before following him? The 2nd level of the Eternity Heart Realm, and after following him, she directly became the 5th level of the Eternity Heart Realm. Most importantly, her future was bright. Now Yi Xian not only had a terrifying and heaven-defying cultivation place like Xiao Ta, but he was also the young master of the mystic world. Damn, wouldn't it be good to follow him? Xin Zhao had lived for so many years, and she could be considered to have seen through some things. Humans. Of course, hard work was important, but one had to suck up to this thigh. If one sucked up to this thigh, one would struggle for many years less. Most of the time, a person's achievements depended partly on their own hard work, but it also depended on who they followed. Yi Xian smiled, didn't you say that you would never accept a master? Xin Zhao was silent for a moment and then she said, unless you take care of me. Yi Xian was speechless. Xin Zhao bowed slightly to Yi Xian, I am willing to serve you. Yi Xian smiled, I will ask the Left Territory Division to make arrangements for you. Xin Zhao nodded, all right. However, his expression turned gloomy. Actually, what she wanted the most was to follow Yi Xian, live in Yi Xian's Xiao Ta and drink Yi Xian's blood, but she knew that it was impossible. Value. She could no longer help Yi Xian. At this moment, she suddenly remembered what Xiao Ta had said to her. It was really a prophecy. If they couldn't keep up with Yi Xian's footsteps, they would be eliminated in the end. After making arrangements for Xin Zhao and the other demon beasts, Yi Xian came to the mystical hall. This mystical hall was a place for meetings in the mystic world. Just as he arrived, a woman appeared in front of him. The person who came was one of the 4 gods, Nan Weiyang. Nan Weiyang bowed slightly to Yi Xian, young master. Yi Xian said softly, can you tell me about this realm system? Nan Weiyang nodded, of course. Yi Xian smiled, what realm is after the 6th level of the Eternal Heart Realm? Nan Weiyang said, Sacred Heart Realm. Yi Xian frowned slightly, Sacred Heart. Nan Weiyang nodded. After condensing the heart of the universe and reaching a certain level, the heart of the universe can undergo a qualitative change, which is the Sacred Heart Realm. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Tell me about this Sacred Heart Realm. Nan Weiyang said, the Sacred Heart Realm is also known as the True Sage. Reaching the True Sage means that one has completely refined the power of the universe that they have devoured. This kind of expert possesses the true power of the universe. Speaking up to here, she paused and then said, Eternal Heart Realm experts are like a good piece of iron that hasn't been forged. We need to constantly temper it with raging flames, remove the impurities in our body, and then hammer it with a heavy hammer. This process is repeated over and over again. After thousands of tempering, only then can it become a peerless divine sword. Yi Xian asked, the difference between the Sacred Heart Realm and the Eternal Heart Realm is the power of the universe? Nan Weiyang shook her head, not just the power of the universe but also the power of the mind. Those who have reached the Sacred Heart Realm are all people with tenacious wills. When their heart of the universe changes, their divine soul and mind will also undergo a qualitative change. According to what I know, some Sacred Heart Realm experts will condense their mind and divine soul power together, breaking through the barriers of the billions of dimensions of the universe, directly merging their mind and divine soul power into the void and primal chaos outside many worlds, analyzing the origin of the primal chaos, tempering their own mind, and then comprehending how the primal chaos gives birth to worlds, from which they can break through realms. Yi Xian looked at Nan Weiyang. You just said that according to what you know, you are not at the Sacred Heart Realm. Nan Weiyang smiled faintly. No. Yi Xian frowned slightly. How is that possible? Your strength far surpasses the 6th level of the Eternal Heart Realm. Nan Weiyang laughed lightly. No, strictly speaking, we 4-God Realm experts can only be considered half-step true sages. Speaking up to here, she paused and then said, in the profound world, only Mistress has a true Sacred Heart Realm. No, Mistress might not only have a Sacred Heart Realm. In addition, there is also the Demon Sect Master. He also had a Sacred Heart Realm. Demon Sect little girl. Yi Xian was silent. He had to say that the little demon was very terrifying. Unfortunately, this little girl first encountered his father's sword Qi, and then encountered Qing himself. If it wasn't for his father's sword Qi and Qing, even these profound world experts might not be the little demon's opponent. After all, she had received help from Arya and Little White. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, that profound ring appearing in his hand. Weiyang, have you seen this ring before? Nan Weiyang glanced at the profound ring in Yi Xian's hand. She shook her head. I have never seen it before. Never seen it before. Yi Xian looked at the profound ring in his hand, shook his head and smiled. Why did mother leave this ring for him? Could it be that there was some family property waiting for him to inherit? Thinking of this, a feeling of helplessness arose in Yi Xian's heart. Who could understand this kind of pain? Chapter 2142. Sacred Heart State. In the following period of time, Yi Xian started cultivating like a madman every day. Unlimited resources. Unlimited time. No enemies at the moment. If he didn't cultivate now, when would he? His goal was the Sacred Heart State. He had devoured quite a lot of the heart of the universe. Although he was only at the 5th level, he could continuously temper his heart of the universe. The cultivation method of the Sacred Heart State was actually very simple. It was to constantly temper one's heart of the universe, allowing oneself to completely absorb the power of the heart of the universe, and then use it for oneself. Actually, he didn't walk the path of cultivation. But now, he realized that he could learn and use the path of cultivation as a reference. Just like a martial arts master before he created a new sect, he would definitely learn the strengths of hundreds of sects. Who could create a new sect out of nothing? The process of tempering the heart of the universe could be said to be quite painful. Just like Nan Weiyang said, it was like forging iron, it needed to be tempered thousands of times. However, Yi Xian wasn't afraid of suffering. Back when he cultivated his body, what kind of suffering hadn't he experienced? Inside Xiaota there was no time to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, 100 years passed. Of course, to the outside it was only 10 days. 100 years of cultivation caused Yi Xian to look a little older. The current him was no longer as sharp as before, he was more reserved. At this time Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, have you reached the Sacred Heart State? Yi Xian smiled slightly. Xiaota, in your heart am I very bad? Xiaota. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. In the next moment he opened his palm and suddenly clenched it. Boom. A powerful force suddenly condensed in his body. The power of the universe. 100 years of bitter cultivation had allowed him to temper his heart of the universe to the extreme, which was the sacred heart state. Yi Xian shifted his consciousness. His divine consciousness traveled through countless spacetime worlds in an instant. In the end, it arrived in a chaotic area. When he had entered this chaotic area, he was shocked to find his divine consciousness was able to absorb a mysterious power from it. The power of chaos? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Right at this moment, a furious shout suddenly resounded from the depths of the chaos. How dare you? Which little saint are you? You actually dare to pry into the chaotic force of my mystic sword immortal sect? Are you tired of living? As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of sword light suddenly slashed out from the depths of the chaos. In the profound world, Yi Xian frowned slightly and quickly withdrew his divine sense. He had just reached the sacred heart realm, so he wasn't proficient in using his divine sense. Thus, he didn't choose to face his opponent head-on. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. He frowned. That chaotic realm had been occupied? Besides that, what the hell is the profound sword immortal sect? Yi Xian was silent for a moment. He left Xiaota and found Nan Weiyang. Weiyang, tell me about the universe you know. He felt that there was a need to understand the background of the universe. Nan Weiyang said in a deep voice, 10 billion light-years away from here, there is a universe called the Observation Universe. This universe is one of the more advanced martial arts civilizations that we know of. As for their strength, we don't know much because we don't have much contact with them. The Observation Universe. Yi Xian spoke solemnly, then do you know about the Profound Sword Immortal Sect? Nan Weiyang frowned slightly. The Profound Sword Immortal Sect? Yi Xian nodded. Nan Weiyang shook her head. I've never heard of it. Yi Xian fell silent. Obviously, Nan Weiyang and the others were probably unable to come into contact with the chaotic world. Meanwhile, the left territory minister suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he bowed slightly. Young Master, Miss South Envoy of Immortal Treasure Pavilion has arrived. South Envoy. Yi Xian smiled, quickly invite her in. The left territory minister left, and it wasn't long before South Envoy appeared in front of Yi Xian and Nan Weiyang. She was slightly stunned when she saw Yi Xian and then she said, you seem to be slightly different. Yi Xian smiled, how am I different? She fell silent for a short moment before she said, has your strength improved? A trace of surprise flashed through Yi Xian's eyes. After all, he'd concealed his aura, but he hadn't expected that South Envoy would actually be able to sense it. Meanwhile, South Envoy suddenly said, let's get down to business. I need your help. Yi Xian gazed at her, what's wrong? She spoke solemnly, my Immortal Treasure Pavilion has encountered a problem. Yi Xian frowned slightly, a problem? She nodded, and then she hesitated for a moment before she said, is it convenient for you to head to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's main branch with me? Yi Xian nodded, sure. Nan Weiyang said, young master, we'll go with you. Yi Xian shook his head, there's no need. She suddenly said, why not? As she spoke, she rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, go. Everyone go. Everyone from the dark world will go. The more the better. Yi Xian was speechless. Nan Weiyang glanced at South Envoy and said, Miss South, has something major happened to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion? South Envoy smiled, it's nothing major. I just want all of you to go have some fun. Really, there's no other meaning. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, as if I'd believe you. As he spoke seriously, what exactly has happened? South Envoy fell silent for a moment and then she said, we obtained a divine artifact earlier, and it was extremely precious. But it was lost. They want us to pay for it. Yi Xian spoke solemnly, you can't afford it? South Envoy nodded, we can, but they don't want us to pay for it and they want us to return it. Yi Xian frowned slightly, why did they lose it? South Envoy smiled, what do you think? Yi Xian spoke solemnly, they want to make a move against all of you. South Envoy nodded. Yi Xian was a little surprised, your Immortal Treasure Pavilion is not weaker than the demon sect, who would dare to make a move against you? South Envoy smiled, this is a bit complicated. Strictly speaking, it's my own matter and I want to ask for your help. Yi Xian still wanted to say something but South Envoy said, can we talk on the way? Yi Xian nodded, okay. Then let's go. South Envoy glanced at Nan Weiyang, that Xian world. Yi Xian smiled, I'll go with you first, if we can't solve it we'll call for help, okay? South Envoy hesitated and then said, young Master Yi, there may be a conflict. Are you sure? Yi Xian looked at South Envoy. Do you have no confidence in me? South Envoy glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, I'm worried about your safety. Yi Xian. At this time Nan Weiyang suddenly said, Young master, for your safety we must go with you. Saying that she turned her head, Tu Chen. As soon as the voice fell, a man appeared behind Yi Xian. It was the leader of the God-slayers, and behind him there were 15 people. Nan Weiyang said in a deep voice, From today onwards, you must not leave young master's side. Tu Chen nodded slightly. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Actually, I'm not weak. Nan Weiyang looked at Yi Xian. I know young master's divine power is unparalleled in the world. We follow young master, there's no other meaning, just to serve young master, don't think too much. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. South Envoy hesitated and then said, Young master Yi, we really don't mean anything else, don't think too much, really we never thought you were weak, you are still young, there is still a lot of room for growth, take your time. Yi Xian's expression froze. Just like that, Yi Xian was escorted to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion by the experts of the mystic world. The headquarters of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was in Universe Gazer. Of course, the strength of the mystic world was at the top even in Universe Gazer. This was also the reason why South Envoy came to him for help. This time, Yi Xian brought 4 God-slayers and 16 God-slayers. They were all the top experts of the mystic world. The rest stayed in the mystic world. After all, the mystic world was very big. It needed people to guard it. On the way, South Envoy walked to Yi Xian and then said, You said that when you see your sister, you will ask her to forge a sword for me, why didn't you tell her? Yi Xian's expression froze. He had actually forgotten about this matter. South Envoy looked at Yi Xian and then blinked. Did you forget? Yi Xian smiled and then said, This? South Envoy suddenly said, Later you will accompany me in a play, then I will forgive you. Yi Xian asked, What play? South Envoy smiled, You will know when the time comes. Yi Xian was speechless. This woman, she still knows how to keep me in suspense. Not long after, Yi Xian and the others arrived at Universe Gazer. As soon as they arrived, Yi Xian saw countless starships in the Milky Way. These starships were very large, some were even tens of thousands of meters long. South Envoy smiled, These are the starships of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion, specially responsible for transportation. Yi Xian looked at South Envoy, Transportation? South Envoy nodded slightly, We sell things, receive things and also transport things. As long as you need, we can help you transport anything, we can do it anywhere in the universe. Not only is it safe but it is also reliable, we can even pay on delivery. Speaking of this, she glanced at the starships. This is founded by the Pavilion Master. The Pavilion Master said, This is called free wind delivery. Just this alone brings us tens of billions of star vein income every year. Yi Xian's expression froze. Tens of billions of star vein? Is it tens of billions? Were star veins so worthless? At this time Xiaota suddenly said, Young lord, don't be shocked. The rich people are far beyond your imagination. Some rich people's meal money, an ordinary rogue cultivator may not earn in a lifetime. Yi Xian was silent. He had to say Xiaota's words made sense. Some circles, if you have not been in contact with them, you will never know how terrifying they are. South Envoy led everyone forward. At this time Yi Xian and the others suddenly stopped. He and the Shen world powerhouses looked into the distance. There was an old man cultivating there. In front of him, there was a huge light screen. He was explaining how to cultivate and so on. It was very detailed. Yi Xian looked at South Envoy. South Envoy smiled. He is projecting live. Let me tell you, don't underestimate him. A half-step Saint Heart powerhouse like him can earn at least a few hundred star veins a month. Of course, half of his income will go to us. You see his light screen? That is not an ordinary light screen. That small light screen, at least tens of thousands of universes. In other words, tens of thousands of cultivators and tens of thousands of universes can see him cultivating directly. At this time the old man in the distance seemed to encounter something. He suddenly became excited. He immediately stood up, tidied up his clothes, then bowed deeply. This old man thanks Brother Zhang for the 100 star veins reward. Brother Zhang is very generous. Everyone. P.S. Thanks to Zongheng Book Friend 59278520, Alliance Master Reward. Because of your reward, this monthly income will exceed 5,000. There are also many reward readers. Thank you everyone for your support. Right, wait for my next big burst. Chapter 2143. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian and the others had strange expressions. It can be done like this? Yi Xian turned to look at Southern Envoy. Miss Southern Envoy, this? Southern Envoy smiled. You think it's incredible? Yi Xian nodded, a bit. Southern Envoy smiled. Actually, when this method of making money was first proposed, we all thought it was incredible and hard to understand. But later we found that anyone who is willing to try it is now rich. Saying this, she shook her head and smiled. I really don't know where the pavilion master got so many wonderful ideas. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Southern Envoy, is your pavilion master a woman? Southern Envoy looked at Yi Xian a bit surprised. How do you know? Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then said, I guessed. Southern Envoy smiled. Then your guess is really accurate. The pavilion master is indeed a woman, moreover, a strange woman. Saying this, she led Yi Xian and the others forward. Along the way, Yi Xian constantly looked around. It has to be said that this universe is indeed different from other universes. There are many strange things. This reminded him of a person. Not that woman from the Milky Way galaxy. Back then, number 9 had also brought many strange things with him. Could it be that this pavilion master is the same as 9th, also from the Milky Way galaxy? Yi Xian was a little curious about the owner of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Not long after, Southern Envoy brought Yi Xian and the others to the Immortal Treasure Jia. This is a relatively central place of Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Only some people with real power can come here. The Immortal Treasure Jia is not big, but it is very beautiful. There are 7 small islands in the Immortal Treasure Jia. The small islands are located in the center of the Immortal Treasure Jia, and around the 7 islands is endless sea. The 7 islands are Dubhi, Merak, Fekta, Migrez, Alioth, Mizar, and Alkaid. There are no luxurious buildings on the islands. Each island only has a few very simple thatched huts, simple to the extreme. Although simple, it is very elegant. Ambassador Nan brought Yi Xian to Alkaid Island because she was the island lord of Alkaid Island. Ambassador Nan led Yi Xian into a thatched hut. She and Yi Xian sat opposite each other while Nan Weiyang and the others waited outside. The southern emissary said solemnly, This matter is rather troublesome. Yi Xian laughed and said, Who are you and who are I? If you have something to say, just say it. If not for Southern Envoy supporting him that day, perhaps he, Yi Xian, would already be dead. As a person, it was natural to know how to be grateful. The southern emissary glanced at Yi Xian and said, Allow me to tell you about the Immortal Treasure Pavilion first. There are 7 islands within the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and the 7 islands represent the 7 island masters. Practically all matters within the pavilion are decided by the 7 island masters. Yi Xian frowned. Don't you have a pavilion master? The southern emissary smiled bitterly. The pavilion master basically doesn't care about matters. Or rather, she doesn't care about small matters. Yi Xian smiled and said, Isn't she afraid that the Immortal Treasure Pavilion will escape her control? The southern emissary looked at Yi Xian and said, No one would dare to do that. In the Immortal Treasure Pavilion she is like a god. Yi Xian picked up the spirit tea in front of him and took a sip. Then he said, Southern emissary, you should tell me about the trouble you encountered first. The southern emissary hesitated for a moment and said, Didn't I bring many people to support you? And then many people were sacrificed. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The people in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion blame you? The southern emissary nodded slightly. A lot of experts were sacrificed. Moreover, I'm suspected of being forcefully dragged into worldly grievances. Now, several island masters who aren't on good terms with me are impeaching me. If it was just impeachment, I wouldn't be afraid. After all, this is an internal matter and I have a few teammates. But the problem is that they joined forces with outsiders to target me. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Joined forces with outsiders? The southern emissary nodded. Not long ago, my man received a divine object. My man fell into a trap. After he took the god item, it mysteriously disappeared. Now the other party is asking me to return the god item. Yi Xian looked at the southern emissary. Can't afford it? The southern emissary shook her head and smiled. If I can, I naturally can. But the problem is that the divine object can't be measured with money. Yi Xian was a bit curious. What divine object is it? The southern emissary said in a deep voice, An ancient divine artifact used to observe the universe, the divine observing mirror. In the history of the universe, there are 3 great ancient divine artifacts, and this divine observing mirror is one of them. This item can't be measured with money. At this point, she shook her head slightly. When my man received this item, he didn't know it was the divine observing mirror. Therefore he received it at a relatively low price. But now, the other party doesn't want compensation as long as we return this item. As she said this, her expression gradually became serious. I investigated and found out that the other party is from the Immortal Tao Temple. Yi Xian asked, this immortal Tao Temple is? The southern emissary explained, do you know why this universe is called the observing universe? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, because of this immortal Tao Temple? The southern emissary nodded, the immortal Tao Temple used to be the super overlord of this universe. Although it later weakened, it is still not to be underestimated. Yi Xian asked, how is the immortal Tao Temple compared to your celestial treasure pavilion? The southern emissary smiled, if you talk about influence they are definitely not as good as us. If we talk about strength we are not weaker than them. Otherwise we can't establish a foothold here. In fact, when the pavilion master came to this world, she wanted to establish the celestial treasure pavilion here. But to do so, she needed the approval of the immortal Tao Temple. After that, the pavilion master went to the immortal Tao Temple. I don't know what they talked about, but after the pavilion master came out, the celestial treasure pavilion was established. Not only that, the immortal Tao Temple's temple master personally came to give a gift. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, in other words, someone in the celestial treasure pavilion is colluding with the immortal Tao Temple to mess with you? The southern emissary nodded, yes. After I found out that the other party was the immortal Tao Temple, I felt that something was wrong, so I immediately went to find you. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what do you want me to do? Destroy the immortal Tao Temple? The southern emissary looked at Yi Xian, are you serious? Yi Xian smiled, do I look like I'm joking? The southern emissary hesitated for a moment and then said, young Master Yi, you and I can be considered friends. I'll say a few words from the bottom of my heart, but you might not like to hear them, Yi Xian said with a smile, go ahead. The southern emissary said in a deep voice, I know that your background is not simple, but you have to understand the principle that there will always be someone better than you. Just like the demon sect. Before they met you they felt that they were invincible, but in the end? They provoked someone they shouldn't have, and then they were annihilated. At this point she glanced at Yi Xian and then she said, you're not angry, right? Yi Xian smiled, I'm not angry, you're right. The southern emissary nodded slightly, I didn't ask you to help me fight this time, I just wanted you to cheer for me. After all, you're the person I chose and you're also a super VIP of my immortal treasure pavilion. Moreover, you have the Shen world behind you. If you stand on my side, then no matter if it's the immortal treasure pavilion or the immortal Tao Temple, they will all have misgivings. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, as a super VIP, did I only obtain the approval of your island or? The southern emissary smiled, don't worry about that, as a VIP, you have obtained the approval of my entire immortal treasure pavilion. They might target me, but they absolutely wouldn't dare to target you, at least not openly. Because the mysterious heaven token was personally made by the pavilion master, and it has a spirit. If it feels uncomfortable it will reject you. But it didn't reject you, so what does that mean? It means that your identity has been approved by the pavilion master. Yi Xian nodded, I understand. Actually, he now understood why the southern emissary protected him so desperately. Perhaps it wasn't because of the green profound sword, but because she trusted the pavilion master. Of course, no matter the reason, this favor was something that Yi Xian would remember for the rest of his life. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared outside the house and she bowed slightly, Island Master, the Island Master and the young Master of the Immortal Tao Temple are here. The southern emissary's eyes narrowed slightly, they don't want to wait. As she spoke she looked outside the house, invite them in. Yi Xian looked at the southern emissary, the Island Master is your enemy? The southern emissary smiled, you can say that. Yi Xian nodded slightly, I understand. The southern emissary looked at Yi Xian, don't make a move or it will be very troublesome. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, I like to win people over with virtue. The southern emissary was speechless. At this moment an old man and a young man walked into the house. They were the Island Master and the young Master of the Immortal Tao Temple, Xian Yun. As soon as the Island Master entered, his gaze descended onto Yi Xian, and then he glanced at Yi Xian and smiled, this is young Master Yi? Yi Xian smiled, yes. Tianxian cupped his fists and smiled brightly, and he was extremely enthusiastic. Young Master Yi, I've heard a lot about you. Yi Xian smiled, you're too kind, Island Master. Tianxian was about to speak, but Xian Yun suddenly smiled, Island Master, let's get down to business first. Tianxian nodded slightly, and then he looked at the southern emissary, South Emissary, the 3 days are up. Did you find the divine observation mirror? The southern emissary thought for a moment, and then he looked at Xian Yun and smiled, young Master, as far as I know, there's no enmity between us. Why do you have to do this to me? Xian Yun blinked, Southern emissary, I don't understand what you're talking about. The Southern emissary smiled. We're both smart people, so let's get straight to the point. Xian Yun smiled. I really don't know what you're talking about, Island Master Southern emissary. You should know the value of the divine observation mirror. I left it here with you and I was going to use you to auction it, but now it's gone. Speaking of which, Island Master Southern emissary, you didn't embezzle it, did you? The Southern emissary stared at Xian Yun and did not speak. At this time, Xian Yun smiled again. Of course, Miss Southern emissary will definitely not embezzle it. Since you didn't embezzle it, then return it to me. The Southern emissary fell silent. Xian Yun suddenly said seriously, Southern emissary, you should know my feelings for you. If you're willing to promise me, then I'll give you the divine observation mirror. Hearing this, the Southern emissary frowned deeply. At this time Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Brother, is this how you chase girls? Xian Yun suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian, smiled and said, Do you have a family? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Xian Yun smiled, Who treats you the best? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he smiled, My sister. Xian Yun looked at Yi Xian and smiled, Then you can notify her now and ask her to come and collect your corpse. Chapter 2144. Arrogant. Not just an ordinary kind of arrogance. However, Yi Xian wasn't angry at all. He looked at Xian Yun and said seriously, I'm a coward. Don't scare me. Xian Yun smiled lightly and maintained his elegant demeanor. He sat at the side and crossed his legs. After that, he picked up the teacup unhurriedly and said with a smile, Kill him. Kill him. As soon as he finished speaking, Nan Wang's expression changed, and she was about to stand up. However, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed her hand. Nan Wang looked at Yi Xian and Yi Xian smiled lightly, Rest. Nan Wang glanced at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Meanwhile, Xian Yun frowned slightly. What are you waiting for? He wasn't talking to anyone. There was still no response. Xian Yun's expression instantly turned gloomy when he saw this, and he was about to flare up. Meanwhile, Tu Chin suddenly walked slowly into the hall, and he held two bloody heads in his hands. Xian Yun's expression instantly changed when he saw the two bloody heads. They were his people. Tu Chin threw the two bloody heads in front of Xian Yun, and then he stared at Xian Yun. As long as Yi Xian gave the order, Tu Chin would immediately attack. Xian Yun suddenly looked at Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. Meanwhile, Tian Shen glanced at him with a trace of warning in his eyes. Xian Yun's expression immediately returned to normal and he smiled, Brother Yi, it's a misunderstanding. He immediately admitted defeat. Tian Shen Island Lord hurriedly smiled as well, It's a misunderstanding. Young Master Yi, it's a misunderstanding. Yi Xian blinked, A misunderstanding? As he spoke, he looked at Xian Yun and smiled, This young Master Xian Yun wanted to kill me just now. Xian Yun looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Tian Shen hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, it's really a misunderstanding. Young Master Xian Yun isn't here to target young Master Yi? Yi Xian suddenly said, Targeting the southern envoy is the same as targeting me. Hearing this, Tianxuan's expression froze, and then gradually turned cold. Ambassador Nan glanced at Yi Xian, and her heart warmed. At the side, Xian Yun looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, In that case, young Master Yi is going to return the divine observation mirror for Southern Ambassador. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Xian Yun and said, Do you know why you are still alive after acting tough in front of me? Xian Yun's eyes narrowed. What? Does Brother Yi want to kill me? Beside Yi Xian, Ambassador Nan looked at Yi Xian and shook his head. She also wanted to kill Xian Yun, but she couldn't because she was the one in the wrong. Moreover, if she killed the young monastery master of the Celestial Cloud Monastery here, it would have a negative impact. The other island masters would not stand on her side. Yi Xian turned to look at Ambassador Nan. Do you trust me? Ambassador Nan hesitated and then said, I'm worried about you. Yi Xian was speechless. This woman's answer was really King good. Yi Xian lightly patted Ambassador Nan's hand and then said, Leave it to me. Don't worry about anything, the sky is falling. I'll hold it. Ambassador Nan stared at Yi Xian. What if you can't hold it? Yi Xian's face darkened. I thought you would be touched. Ambassador Nan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. You and I are friends. You are willing to risk your life for a friend. This is a matter of course. Why would I be touched? If I am touched, wouldn't that be an insult to our pure friendship? Yi Xian's expression froze. At this moment, Xian Yun suddenly said coldly, Are you two done flirting? Ambassador Nan looked at Xian Yun. Young Master Xian Yun, it's not that I don't know about your friendship. It's just that I, Ambassador Nan, am focused on the Tao and am not in the mood for love. I know that the divine observation mirror is still in your hands. Let's end this matter here. What do you think? Xian Yun stared coldly at Ambassador Nan. How am I inferior to him? In terms of status, I am the young master of the immortal Tao Temple. My future is limitless. In terms of strength, I am ranked 5th on the God list. But what about him? I'm afraid he can't even enter the God list. In terms of looks. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian. Damn, he suddenly realized that this Yi Xian was quite handsome. In terms of looks, he couldn't compare. Yi Xian smiled. What about in terms of looks? Xian Yun said sarcastically, what's the use of looks? In this world, strength and family background are what matters. Let me ask you, do you have an illustrious family background? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, young master, if you talk like this, then I feel that it's meaningless. Xian Yun sneered. Meaningless? Do you know? Tianxian couldn't help but remind him. Young Master Xian Yun, young Master Yi is the young master of the mystic world and his background can be considered illustrious. Xian Yun's expression froze when he heard this. The mystic world. He'd heard of it but he didn't know much about it. After all, it was quite far from here. Meanwhile, Ambassador Nan said abruptly, young Master Xian Yun, I still have the same opinion. Can we let this matter go? Xian Yun stared fixedly at Ambassador Nan. I can let it go, but you have to return the divine observation mirror to me. Ambassador Nan thought for a moment and then said, didn't you ask me how I'm inferior to young Master Yi? Then I'll answer you now. He's very big and very hard. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the hall was stunned. Even Tu Chen, who'd always been silent, couldn't help but glance at Ambassador Nan, and then he looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's mind was buzzing. Fuck. Why did she suddenly get in the car? Xian Yun's expression suddenly became ferocious. Woman, I'll make living worse than death for you. As he spoke, he charged directly at Ambassador Nan. At this moment, he was infuriated to the point his mind wasn't normal. Tianxian's expression instantly changed when he saw Xian Yun suddenly attack. After all, this was the Immortal Artifact Pavilion, so it might not be a big deal if Xian Yun attacked Yi Xian here. Even though Yi Xian was a distinguished guest, he wasn't a member of the Immortal Artifact Pavilion in the end. If he killed Yi Xian, then Tianxian could casually find an excuse to make the Immortal Temple and the Mystic World fight to the death. However, Ambassador Nan was different. She was a member of the Immortal Artifact Pavilion. Once Xian Yun attacked her, then it would be equivalent to looking down upon the Immortal Artifact Pavilion. Even though there was internal strife within the Immortal Artifact Pavilion, once Xian Yun attacked Ambassador Nan, then he would have to stand on her side regardless of whether he was willing or not. When he thought up to here, Tianxian suddenly came to a realization. Damn it. She's infuriating Xian Yun on purpose. Tianxian wanted to stop her, but it was too late because Tu Chen had suddenly vanished on the spot. Xian Yun suddenly stopped in place and a stream of blood spurted from his throat. In an instant, his head directly fell from his neck, and blood soared into the sky. Dead. On the side, Tianxian was petrified. This is serious. At this time, Ambassador Nan walked in front of Xian Yun. She opened her palm, and Xian Yun's storage ring appeared in her hand. She glanced at it, and the next moment, an ancient mirror appeared in front of her. Ambassador Nan looked at Tianxian and blinked. Island Lord Tianxian, look, this God-observing mirror is in his hand. Tianxian's expression was somewhat ugly. Ambassador Nan said seriously, Island Lord Tianxian, I think you definitely don't know about this. You must have been deceived by him. Right? After a moment of silence, Tianxian said, of course. Ambassador Nan said again, Island Lord Tianxian, just now Xian Yun took the initiative to attack me. You saw it with your own eyes, right? Tianxian looked at Ambassador Nan. Yes. Ambassador Nan smiled slightly, her smile was bright. After a moment of silence, Tianxian suddenly smiled. Island Lord Tianxian, good scheming. This time the old man lost. But, after saying that, he glanced at Yi Xian. Old man can see that young Master Yi is sincere to you, but you did this. Haha, this has nothing to do with the old man, goodbye. After saying that, he turned and left. The smile on Ambassador Nan's face gradually disappeared. On the side, Yi Xian looked at Xian Yun's corpse on the ground, shook his head and smiled. His smile was somewhat self-deprecating. In fact, this was a trap. A trap set by Ambassador Nan. And he, Yi Xian, was just a pawn in this game. Ambassador Nan already knew that Xian Yun would not give up, so she deliberately set such a trap. And the word she said just now was naturally to deliberately provoke this brainless Xian Yun. As soon as Xian Yun made a move, she knew that her people would definitely attack. Who killed Xian Yun? She killed him. In short, her trouble was completely solved. Not only was it solved, but she also obtained the God-observing mirror. Most importantly, she didn't have any trouble, because she was killed by Yi Xian. Moreover, even if the immortal Taoist temple came to find trouble with her, she was not afraid, because the island masters of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion would definitely stand on her side. In short, this time not only did she solve her own trouble, she also obtained benefits. At this moment, Ambassador Nan turned to look at Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Are you angry?" Looking at the innocent and pure face of Ambassador Nan, Yi Xian suddenly fell into a trance. Ambassador Nan lowered her head slightly and said softly, "I'm sorry." Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, this woman is not simple, you should not play with her." Yi Xian looked at Ambassador Nan in front of him and said with a smile, "What are you apologizing for? You helped me in the past, not to mention using me even if you sold me. This favor, I will return it to you." Hearing this, Ambassador Nan's right hand trembled slightly. Return the favor. When Yi Xian first came, he did not do it to return the favor, but he really treated her as a friend. But now he said he was returning the favor. Yi Xian's voice was still so gentle, and his smile was still so bright, but she knew that they were estranged. At this moment, Ambassador Nan suddenly regretted. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "I might have some trouble, so I won't stay here. Island Lord Nan, we will meet again." Then he walked out with Tu Chen. Ambassador Nan suddenly asked, "Are you angry?" Yi Xian left the house without looking back. After leaving the house, Yi Xian directly led everyone out of the immortal treasure world. Somewhere in the sky, Yi Xian stopped. He looked up into the distance and said softly, "I treat her as a friend. When I came here, I thought that even if I have to become enemies with the whole universe, I will protect her." As he spoke, he shook his head and smiled. "Small pagoda, I suddenly noticed something. All along the way, I've gotten to know many women, and I suddenly noticed that if it wasn't for my father and Qing, do you think they would give a damn about me?" Xiao Ta was silent for a long time. "Young master, your question is like a rich second generation asking a woman in the secular world, 'Are you following me for my money?' The answer is definitely yes." Saying this, he hesitated and then said, "Young master, it's not that I want to hurt you, but the reason why Ambassador Nan chose you was not because of you, but because of me, Xiao Ta. He took a fancy to me, Xiao Ta, and then for my sake he chose you, Yi Xian." P.S. Yesterday there was a plot related to the Milky Way. Many readers are cursing. Don't worry, the only sword will not write a plot related to the Milky Way. The plot related to the Milky Way will only appear in the chapters or in the next book. Here it can only be regarded as a foreshadowing. As for the end of the book, don't ask. Just like the sword domain, maybe one day it will suddenly be finished and no one will expect it. Chapter 2145. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened when he heard Xiao Ta. "Damn it. I really want to smash this damned pagoda." Meanwhile, Xiao Ta spoke abruptly, "Young master, don't worry about this. We've already repaid the debt, so we're even. If I'm not wrong, then the immortal Taoist temple will definitely come looking for trouble with you. Prepare for battle. Don't worry, I'll be the vanguard this time. With Xiao Ta here, I guarantee that nothing bad will happen to you." Yi Xian was speechless. Right at this moment, a woman walked over slowly from afar. The woman wore a blue dress and her long hair fluttered in the wind. She seemed very quiet and elegant. Yi Xian frowned slightly. She wouldn't be from the immortal Taoist temple, right? Tu Chen spoke abruptly, "Stop." The woman smiled, "Young Master Yi, I'm Shui Yan, the island master of Mizar Island." "Island master." Yi Xian gazed at Shui Yan. "Is something the matter?" Shui Yan grinned, "Young Master Yi, I'm aware of what happened earlier. I came here to remind you that you possess the profound heaven token. So long as you don't leave my immortal treasure world, then we have the responsibility to protect you." Yi Xian smiled, "What if they attack my immortal treasure world?" Shui Yan fell silent for a moment and then she said, "Then we're powerless to do anything. We can only protect you." Yi Xian nodded, "I appreciate Miss Shui Yan's good intentions." Shui Yan glanced at Yi Xian and then she said, "Young Master Yi, take care." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Shui Yan, why did you come to warn me?" Shui Yan smiled, "Young Master Yi, what do you think of the master of Southern Angel Island?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, She has unique insight and is extremely intelligent. Shui Yan nodded, indeed. Unfortunately, she's too intelligent. Yi Xian looked at Shui Yan. Shui Yan faintly smiled. She looks harmless on the surface, but in reality, no one in my celestial treasure pavilion can compare to her in terms of scheming. The reason why Island Lord Tianxian is targeting her is because she has gone too far. Yi Xian smiled and said, Island Master Shuiyan, why are you telling me this? Shui Yan faintly smiled. I just want to remind young Master Yi that this matter is only the beginning and not the end. Yi Xian frowned. Shui Yan continued, now that Xian Yun is dead, the immortal Taoist faction will definitely not let this matter rest. Yi Xian said solemnly, she wants our profound world to fight with the immortal Taoist temple. Shui Yan nodded. Yi Xian was puzzled. What's in it for her? Just as Shui Yan was about to speak, she suddenly turned her head. The sound of a bell came from the distant immortal treasure world. Seeing this, Shui Yan frowned slightly. Yi Xian asked, what's the matter? Shui Yan said solemnly, the immortal bell has rung. All island masters must rush over immediately. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and said, let's go back to the previous topic. Young Master Yi, do you know why she used you? Yi Xian smiled and said, tell me about it. Shui Yan's lips curled up slightly. Her wisdom is unparalleled, but she made a huge mistake. She underestimated young Master Ye's wisdom. Perhaps in the beginning, young Master Yi was like Xian Yun in her heart, a brainless second generation. However, she never expected that young Master Yi was also a smart person. As she spoke, she shook her head slightly. Young Master Yi, you treat her as a friend, but she treats you as a wooden club. As she spoke, she turned around and disappeared into the horizon. Yi Xian looked at the disappearing Shui Yan and shook his head with a smile. This immortal treasure pavilion is really interesting. The internal strife has actually reached such a degree. At the side, Nan Weiyang said solemnly, young master, we have to leave Universe Observatory. Yi Xian shook his head, it's too late. Nan Weiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Then South Envoy, Yi Xian smiled and said, don't be angry. The reason she chose me from the beginning was very clear. Now that we have returned the favor, we are even. Nan Weiyang nodded slightly. Yi Xian said softly, if I'm not wrong, the experts of Immortal Taoist Temple should be on their way. Under normal circumstances, Immortal Taoist Temple would not become her chess piece. In other words, if Immortal Taoist Temple targets me. At this point, she narrowed her eyes. If the Immortal Taoist Temple is targeting me, then there's only one explanation. The one who's truly allied with the Immortal Taoist Temple isn't Tianxian, but South Envoy. Xian Yun is just a sacrifice. Nan Weiyang said solemnly, will Immortal Taoist Temple fight us to the death? Yi Xian nodded, I'm afraid they will. Nan Weiyang frowned, why? Yi Xian said solemnly, if I'm not wrong, she must have revealed my azure profound sword and Xiao Ta to Immortal Taoist Temple. Nan Weiyang frowned, I don't understand. She has seen the terrifying strength of Mistress and young Master's sister. Yi Xian suddenly said, Immortal Taoist Temple has not seen it. In other words, she not only plotted against us but also Immortal Taoist Temple. Moreover, it is the kind of plotting against Immortal Taoist Temple. Hearing this, Nan Weiyang's face instantly turned cold. Isn't she afraid that we will kill her? Yi Xian shook his head. She is not afraid. Nan Weiyang looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian smiled and said, because we owe her a favor. Moreover, she has not taken the initiative to attack us. How can we kill her? Nan Weiyang's face became more and more ugly. Yi Xian said softly, not only us and Immortal Taoist Temple, if I am not wrong, Immortal Treasure Pavilion is also within her calculations. She is plotting something big. Nan Weiyang said solemnly, you may know a person's face but not their heart. Yi Xian smiled slightly, now we have a headache because this is an overt plot. Just watch. When Immortal Taoist Temple arrives, they will definitely attack us like mad dogs. On the surface they will take revenge for Xian Yun, but in reality they want to devour my sword and Xiao Ta as well as our entire Shen world. After all, we did not bring many people this time. Nan Weiyang looked at Yi Xian. Young master, must we follow this woman's script? Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then said, yes. Yes. Hearing this, he suddenly felt a trace of helplessness in his heart. This Nanshi's overt plot was impossible to break. Yi Xian suddenly looked into the distance. Not far from the horizon, a powerful aura swept over. Obviously, the experts of Immortal Taoist Temple had arrived. Nan Weiyang hesitated for a moment and then she said, I hope young master is wrong. Yi Xian smiled, I hope so. Meanwhile, a few dozen people appeared in front of Yi Xian's group. The person in the lead was an old man who held a walking stick and he wore a green Taoist robe. There were 12 black-robed figures behind him, and all of them actually possessed half-step saint hearts. They didn't possess saint hearts. Even in this universe, a sacred heart was in existence that was as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Nan Weiyang gazed at the old man in the lead and spoke in a low voice, Your Excellency, about this. The old man spoke abruptly, Kill. Leave no one alive. Leave no one alive. Not a single one. His attitude was very clear. Nan Weiyang's expression instantly turned cold when she witnessed this scene. Obviously Yi Xian was completely right. As soon as the voice of the old man with a walking stick faded away, the experts behind him immediately dashed toward Yi Xian and the others. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Nan Weiyang's eyes. Protect the young master. As soon as she finished speaking, the 16 god slayers behind Yi Xian suddenly dashed out. As soon as they dashed out, several shrill screams rang out in the distance. Yi Xian was quite shocked as he gazed at Tu Chen and the others. Tu Chen and the others were only at the half-step saint heart, but their combat strength was extraordinarily terrifying. Among the 4 gods, other than Nan Weiyang, the other 3 gods also rushed over. They were crushed. Even though Yi Xian's group didn't have an advantage in numbers, their combat strength was able to crush the old man's group. Of course this was normal. After all the experts he'd brought with him were the strongest experts of the Dark World, whereas the experts of the immortal Taoist temple that the old man had brought with him were definitely not the best. The old man with the walking stick was stunned. They're that strong? Did Nan Weiyang give us the wrong information? As he thought about this, the immortal Taoist temple had lost over 10 experts, and more were falling incessantly. They weren't a match for them at all. The old man with the walking stick hurriedly said, Stop. However, Tu Chen and the others didn't stop. Not only did they not stop, but they even sped up. The old man with the walking stick suddenly shouted fiercely, How dare you? As he spoke, he suddenly charged towards Yi Xian. Obviously he wanted to capture the leader first. Yi Xian gazed silently at the old man with the walking stick from afar. Right at this moment, an afterimage suddenly flashed in front of Yi Xian. In the next moment, the old man with a walking stick in the distance was directly slashed and sent flying several thousands of feet away. As soon as he stopped, a cold light directly flashed through his throat. The old man's head shot up into the sky while blood sprayed out like a fountain. It was an extremely shocking scene. Instant kill. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly as he gazed into the distance. There stood 2 black-clothed men with daggers in their hands. It was these 2 black-clothed men who'd attacked just now. Yi Xian frowned slightly. These 2 black-clothed men weren't the 16 god slayers, nor were they the 4 god slayers. Most importantly, even though they weren't at the Sacred Heart realm, they still made him feel slightly dangerous. After all, he was at the Sacred Heart realm, yet they were actually able to make him feel slightly dangerous. The 2 black-clothed men suddenly put away their daggers, and then they bowed deeply to Yi Xian. Yi Xian gazed at them. Who are you? One of them said in a hoarse voice, Heavenly punishment, earthly destruction. Heavenly punishment? Earthly destruction? Yi Xian gazed at Nan Weiyang. Nan Weiyang hesitated for a moment before she said, I don't know. Yi Xian gazed at Tu Chen and Tu Chen shook his head, I don't know. I don't know any of them. Yi Xian looked at the 2 black-clothed men again. At this time, one of them bowed respectfully again, We are only responsible to Mistress. Outsiders don't know us. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, You've been following me? The black-clothed man nodded. Mistress has instructed us to follow young master at all times to ensure young master's safety. Yi Xian was silent. These 2 had been following him for so long, yet he hadn't noticed them. Yi Xian suddenly said, Xiao Ta, didn't you sense them? Xiao Ta smiled proudly, Young master, you're too narrow-minded. With my current strength, do I need to care about these petty tricks? A Xiao Ta am never a show-off. In one sentence, I'm indifferent to life and death. If you can't accept it, then fight. Yi Xian. Chapter 2146. Yi Xian was speechless. Since Qing had transformed Xiao Ta, he'd become so arrogant that he almost didn't recognize himself. He was truly unable to figure out how Xiao Ta had become so flashy. Meanwhile, the situation had become completely one-sided with the addition of Heaven's might and Earthen annihilation. The experts of the temple didn't even have a chance to flee, and they'd been annihilated in less than an instant. Of course, Yi Xian didn't stand by idly, and he immediately put away the cores of the universe. Moreover, he utilized the green profound sword to absorb the souls of all the experts of the temple. These souls were simply great nourishment to the green profound sword. However, it was very difficult for the green profound sword to improve right now unless it devoured even stronger souls like those at the Sacred Heart realm. Something worthy of mentioning was that not a single person on Yi Xian's side had perished. They'd been completely crushed. Tu Chen walked slowly over to Yi Xian, and then he opened his palm to reveal a pile of spatial rings. Young master, the spoils of the battle. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial rings and smiled. I'll keep those cores of the universe. All of you keep these. Tu Chen shook his head. They belong to you, young master. Yi Xian glanced at Tu Chen and the others and he was slightly curious. Why are all of you so loyal to me? Tu Chen replied, you're the young master. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, why are all of you so loyal to my mother? Tu Chen hesitated for a moment before he said, Mistress saved my 16 brothers. Not only that, she even gave us cultivation techniques and cultivation resources. If it wasn't for her, my 16 brothers would have died all those years ago. Yi Xian gazed at Nan Weiyang. What about all of you? Nan Weiyang grinned. She gave us a new lease on life. If it wasn't for her, then not to mention attaining the half-step Sacred Heart, we wouldn't even be able to attain the 6th level of the Eternal Heart realm. Yi Xian nodded slightly. I understand. He knew that these people in front of him had received kindness from him, and the reason they respected him so much was actually because of his mother. Of course he wouldn't mind it in the slightest. Yi Xian glanced at the storage rings in Tu Chen's hand and said, you can keep them. Tu Chen was somewhat hesitant. Yi Xian smiled and said, this is an order. Tu Chen didn't hesitate any longer when he heard this, and he immediately accepted the spatial rings. Yi Xian looked at Sky's Retribution and Earth's Destroyer. Aside from him, the strongest was Sky's Retribution and Earth's Destroyer. These two assassins must have been carefully trained by his mother. Yi Xian looked at the two of them. Other than the two of you, is there anyone else secretly protecting me? God's Retribution hesitated and said, there is one. Oh. Yi Xian asked with a smile. God's Retribution said in a low voice, evil arrival. Yi Xian frowned. Evil advent? Sky's Retribution nodded. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, is it a man or a woman? Sky's Retribution shook his head. I don't know. Yi Xian gazed at Sky's Retribution. Sky's Retribution hesitated for a moment and said, I only heard Madame mention it once. As for whether it's a man or a woman, we don't know. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled bitterly. At this moment he thought of the spatial ring in Xiao Ta's possession. Perhaps it was because his mother had almost caused him to die, and she hadn't been with him when he was young. So, she felt guilty in her heart and she wanted to make it up to him like crazy. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled and his heart felt warm. Meanwhile, Nan Weiyang suddenly said, young master, what should we do now? Yi Xian smiled and said, let's go to the temple and talk. Nan Weiyang was slightly hesitant. Young master, can we talk? Yi Xian chuckled lightly and said, after so many of them died, they should be able to calm down a bit. Let's go. As he spoke, all of them left. As for Sky's Retribution and Earth's Destroyer, they hid themselves once more. Not long after Yi Xian and the others left, a woman suddenly appeared here. This woman was South Envoy. South Envoy looked at the distant horizon in silence. Meanwhile, the Immortal Ambassador and the Left Envoy appeared by her side. The Immortal Ambassador hesitated for a moment and said, Island Lord. At this point she seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, Vice Pavilion Lord. Vice Pavilion Lord. At this moment, South Envoy had been promoted from Island Lord to Vice Pavilion Lord, and her status in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was only second to the Mysterious Pavilion Lord. It could be said that she was truly below one and above all. South Envoy chuckled and said, do you think the Immortal Tao Temple will talk to them? The Immortal Ambassador nodded and said, they will. South Envoy smiled and said, go on. The Immortal Ambassador said in a low voice, young Master Yi isn't an ordinary person, and he possesses a terrifying force that isn't inferior to the Immortal Tao Temple. If the Immortal Tao Temple chooses not to talk, then it will be a mutual destruction, and they will absolutely not go down with him. The Left Envoy nodded slightly and said, Immortal Ambassador's words make sense. The Immortal Tao Temple doesn't have the courage to go down with them. Moreover, the Temple Lord of the Immortal Tao Temple definitely knows that we tricked them and now they... At this point he didn't continue. South Envoy said softly, you're wrong. The two of them looked at South Envoy. South Envoy chuckled and said, Under normal circumstances, that would indeed be the case. But unfortunately you've underestimated the immortal Tao Temple. You've greatly underestimated them. The immortal ambassador frowned slightly and said, "What do you mean?" South Envoy smiled and said, "Perhaps even now, the two of you are still wondering why young Master Yi has such a terrifying expert behind him, and why I still schemed against him and became enemies with him, right?" The immortal ambassador and the left envoy nodded. How terrifying was the woman in the plain dress. Even thinking about it now, they still felt their scalps tingle. That was a godlike person. South Envoy looked into the distance and said softly, "Some of the rules of this world are unfair, and we don't have the ability to break these unfair rules, but the person behind him can. I want to use him to break those unfair rules." Hearing this, the two of them understood. The southern envoy wanted to borrow the power of the force behind Yi Xian. The immortal ambassador suddenly said, "Deputy Pavilion Lord, the Pavilion Lord. Is this the Pavilion Lord's intention?" Pavilion Lord. South Envoy was slightly stunned and then said softly, "If she was willing, why would I need to borrow young Master Ye's hand?" The Pavilion Lord. "She's not interested in these things. Now she might have even forgotten about us. It's been more than 1,000 years. I haven't seen her for more than 1,000 years, and I haven't received her orders. Has she returned to her hometown that she's been longing for?" The immortal ambassador and the immortal ambassador were silent. Pavilion Lord. They had never seen this mysterious Pavilion Lord before. Some people might not believe it if they said it out. Only the 7 Pavilion Lords had seen her, but now, even the 7 Pavilion Lords had not seen the Pavilion Lord for a long time. South Envoy suddenly said, "Tell them to immediately recall all the experts outside." After saying that, she turned and left. 2 hours ago. After Island Lord Shuiyan parted ways with Yi Xian, she returned to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. The 6 Island Lords gathered. Only South Envoy was left. The 6 of them sat facing each other in silence. At this time, a woman slowly walked into the hall. The 6 of them turned around to look at her. It was South Envoy. South Envoy walked over to the seat of the Lord of the main hall and sat down. The expressions of the other 6 Island Lords changed slightly when they saw this. That was the position of Island Lord. South Envoy suddenly said, "From this moment onward, I'm the Vice Pavilion Lord of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. From today onward, besides the Pavilion Lord, everything I say goes." As she spoke, an extremely terrifying pressure suddenly enveloped the 6 of them. The expressions of the other 6 changed drastically, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The Saint Heart Realm. This is the Saint Heart Realm. The true saint? South Envoy has actually attained the true saint realm? Meanwhile, South Envoy suddenly glanced at them and said, "Who agrees and who objects?" The hall was deathly silent. Yi Xian led the group to the immortal world. The immortal world was much larger than the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. As soon as Yi Xian and the others entered the immortal world, a few dozen powerful divine senses enveloped them. Subsequently, the space before Yi Xian and the others suddenly split open, and then a middle-aged man in a Taoist robe and holding a horsetail whisk walked out slowly. This man was the Temple Lord of the Immortal Tao Temple, Vast Immortal. Vast Immortal looked at Yi Xian with a calm expression and said, "Young Master Yi, are you here to annihilate my Immortal Tao Temple?" Yi Xian immediately frowned when he heard this. Judging from his attitude, it doesn't seem like he wants to negotiate. At this moment he knew that he'd made a mistake. Vast Immortal looked at Yi Xian and said, "Really?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Temple Lord Vast Immortal, I'm really quite curious. With your intelligence, you should know that this is a trap set up by South Envoy." Vast Immortal's expression was calm as he said, "You're wrong. It's a trap set up by both of us. However, she concealed the true strength of you in the Xian world. Of course that's because I was too careless." Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, "In order to set up this trap, you even caused your son to die?" Vast Immortal looked at Yi Xian and said, "He's just a disappointing son. It doesn't matter if he's dead. I still have a few hundred sons. What's wrong with that?" Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment he suddenly felt that his father was already very benevolent and righteous. Although his father also caused trouble for him, he didn't cause him to die. His father was not as good as the best, but he was better than the worst. Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and said, "What exactly are you planning?" Vast Immortal looked at Yi Xian and said, "You have 2 godly items on you. One is a godly sword. This sword can ignore any space and time and is extremely sharp. The other is Xiao Ta. The time inside is different from the time outside. In other words, 10 years inside is equivalent to 1 day outside, right? Yi Xian fell silent. He was not surprised. After all, he had always used the green profound sword and he had given it to South Envoy before. As for Xiao Ta, although South Envoy had never entered Xiao Ta, other beasts had entered Xiao Ta. For example, Xin Zhao and others, and even earlier. With South Envoy's influence, it wasn't difficult for him to investigate this. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly laughed and said, "His target is me. Young master, he said that his target is me. Ah. Today I, Xiao Ta, will destroy this immortal Dao temple. Even 3 swords won't be able to protect them." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ta rushed out of Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian. P.S. The smell of the ticket. Chapter 2147. Now, Small Tower did what it said it would do, overflowing with aggressiveness. The moment he charged out of Yi Xian's body, he charged at the Firmament Immortal. The Firmament Immortal frowned when he saw Xiao Ta charging at him. Then he threw a punch and countless rays of white light surged out from his punch. Boom. As a shocking explosion sounded out, the white light was instantly destroyed. Following that, the celestial firmament was sent flying tens of thousands of feet away. When he finally stopped, his right arm was instantly destroyed. Not only his right arm, but even his body was completely cracked at this moment. Dumbfounded. Everyone in the area was dumbfounded, including Yi Xian himself. Damn it, is this Xiao Ta so powerful? The Firmament Immortal did not have a sacred heart, but he did have a half-step sacred heart. Furthermore, it was definitely not an ordinary sacred heart. However, he was not stronger than Xiao Ta. The Firmament Immortal looked at Xiao Ta in disbelief. "You?" Xiao Ta burst out laughing. "How ridiculous. How dare you covet the #1 pagoda in the all heavens and realms? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself? Do you think you are worthy of my loyalty?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged into the distance. The entire world of immortals turned illusory after the collision. His strength was too terrifying. Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment he was extremely shocked. Damn it. The pagoda's current strength was simply too terrifying. Even he was somewhat fearful of this collision. In the distance, the Celestial's expression changed when he saw the tiny pagoda charging towards him, and then he suddenly waved the horsetail whisk in his left hand. In an instant, the horsetail whisk transformed into a river that was tens of thousands of meters long. Boundless energy poured out from the river and blasted towards the tiny pagoda. In an instant, the entire space in the surroundings started to boil violently like water that was boiling. At this moment, Xiao Ta charged at him. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the 10,000 zhang long river turned into dust. The next moment, the celestial firmament was sent flying tens of thousands of zhang away. This time, when he stopped moving, his physical body was destroyed and only his soul was left. Yi Xian and the others were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. From afar, Xiao Ta suddenly laughed. "That's it?" Yi Xian was speechless. The Firmament Immortal glared at Xiao Ta, his eyes filled with anger and malevolence. He was actually looked down upon by a pagoda. At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly smiles disdainfully. "Immortal Dao Temple, all of you come at me together. I'm invincible, so do whatever you want." Yi Xian was speechless. Little Soul suddenly said, "Young lord, don't you care about it?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "I'm afraid it doesn't even care about Dad now, let alone me. Let it continue to float. I can't stay cool for more than 3 days. It should be about the same." Xiao Hun. From afar, Xiao Ta was trembling slightly. Powerful auras continuously surged out from its body. At this moment, it gave off a feeling that it was the only supreme being in this world. The Firmament Immortal glared at Xiao Ta, his face extremely ugly. "Destroy it. Destroy it." Just as he finished speaking, many mysterious experts from the Immortal Dao Temple appeared in the surroundings. Yi Xian took a glance at them, but there was still no Sacred Heart state. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned slightly. Could it be that this Immortal Dao Temple doesn't have Sacred Heart state? That shouldn't be the case. At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, watch and see how I destroy the Immortal Dao Temple." Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly rammed forward again. He didn't know any martial arts, he only knew how to ram. However, it was really terrifying because after being modified by Qing, it had undergone earth-shattering changes. Especially the horn on its head. That horn was something that could withstand the Qingshan sword. Xiao Ta directly faced the group of Immortal Dao Temple's experts head-on. His fighting style was very simple, he just rammed forward and hit whoever he hit. Although it was a random attack, Yi Xian and the others realized that the group of Immortal Dao Temple's experts couldn't do anything to him, because he was too tough. Even those half-step Sacred Heart State experts couldn't do anything to him. Just like that, Xiao Tai used the power of a pagoda to fight the entire Immortal Dao Temple head-on. Yi Xian and the others who were standing at the side were dumbfounded. Next to Yi Xian, Nan Weiyang said, "Do you need help?" Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta and was about to speak when Xiao Ta suddenly laughed. "Young lord, I'm invincible, don't help me." Yi Xian. Nan Weiyang's expression became a little strange. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Kill." Just as he finished speaking, the group of experts beside him directly rushed out. He knew that this matter couldn't be resolved peacefully. Since it couldn't be resolved peacefully, he chose to kill them all. Right at this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian and said angrily, "Young lord, I already said I don't want to help." Yi Xian's eyes narrowed. Hearing this, Xiao Ta was shocked and hurriedly said, "Young lord, whatever you say." Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "Come back." Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment and then turned into a ray of light and returned to Yi Xian. Xiao Ta said softly, "Young lord, I just want to help you." Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta. "Do you want me to call you young lord in the future?" Xiao Ta said subconsciously, "Really?" Then, as it spoke, it seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly changed its words. "This isn't too good." Yi Xian sighed softly. He was not really angry with Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta and him had been relying on each other for a long time. Although they usually laughed and joked around, they were still very close to each other. He actually understood Xiao Ta a little. What? Because he and Small Pagoda had truly been too miserable in the past. They would be beaten up wherever they went. They had been holding it in for too long. Now that they had finally changed their fate, how could they not be arrogant? In fact, he also wanted to be arrogant. However, he still held it in. Low profile. A true expert would always be low profile and act like an expert. As Tu Chen and the others joined in, another massacre started. From afar, the Tsang Immortal was shocked when he saw that the experts on his side were no match for Tu Chen and the others. At this moment, he realized that the experts from the mystic world were extremely powerful. The Tsang Immortal immediately said, "Get out of the formation, get out." Before he could finish his sentence, a sword suddenly pierced through his throat. A stream of blood spurted out from the Tsang Immortal's throat. Yi Xian had made his move. However, he had concealed his true strength and the sword that he had used was not the Qingxian sword. The Tsang Immortal looked at Yi Xian from afar and his eyes were filled with fear as if he had discovered something. Yi Xian raised his finger and swept it across the air. The Qingxian sword pierced into the Tsang Immortal's body. In an instant, the Tsang Immortal was completely absorbed by the Qingxian sword. Instant kill. Seeing this, the experts from the Celestial Taoist Temple were shocked. The temple leader was killed just like that? What else could they do? At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from the depths of the Celestial Taoist Temple. Yi Xian squinted his eyes. The aura of a Sacred Heart expert. This Celestial Taoist Temple really did have a Sacred Heart expert. Yi Xian looked into the distance. Not far away, an old man was walking slowly towards him. The old man was dressed in plain clothes and his face was old. Judging from his appearance, he did not look like someone at the Sacred Heart realm at all. Instead, he looked more like an old man with one foot in the grave. The old man walked slowly to a place not far away from Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. "Are you a Sacred Heart expert?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No." The old man chuckled. "You are too humble." Yi Xian smiled. "What do you think about this matter?" The old man stared at Yi Xian. "It is impossible to be kind." Yi Xian smiled. "Indeed." Saying this, he turned to look at Tu Chen and the others. "Everyone work hard. Remember, in this Celestial Taoist Temple, do not let a chicken or a dog go. Do not let a chicken or a dog go." Hearing this, Tu Chen and the others immediately started to fight with their lives. In front of Yi Xian, the old man smiled. What big words. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly threw a punch at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly threw Xiao Ta at the old man. Xiao Ta, boom. With a loud explosion, Xiao Ta and Xiao Ta retreated at the same time. After the old man stopped, he looked at his right hand and saw that there were countless cracks on his fist. The old man furrowed his brows when he saw this. Beside him, Yi Xian was also a little shocked. This Xiao Ta could even injure a Sacred Heart expert? How fierce. At this moment, the old man looked at Tiny Pagoda, and he was just about to attack when numerous shrill cries suddenly resounded in his ears. The old man turned his head. In the next moment, his expression changed because he found that the Xian world experts were crazily slaughtering the experts of the Celestial Dao sect. Slaughter. The old man's expression was extremely unsightly because he hadn't expected the gap in combat strength between them to be so huge. The old man gazed at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Continue killing." As he spoke, he opened his palm and Xiao Ta charged forward. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw Xiao Ta charge towards him. In the next moment he flipped his right hand and in an instant the entire world was overturned. The world was overturned. However, Xiao Ta didn't care about anything and just charged forward. Rumble. This collision caused the world to be shattered by Xiao Ta. At the same time the entire immortal Dao world started to shatter. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. In an instant the Qingxian sword in his hand suddenly flew out. In an instant, the heads of hundreds of experts from the immortal Dao world shot into the sky. A few hundred heads with a single swing of the sword. The remaining experts from the immortal Dao world were horrified when they witnessed this scene, and they retreated explosively. All of them looked at Yi Xian as if they were looking at a devil. On the other hand, the old man gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment. Yi Xian gazed at the old man and grinned, "Can we talk now?" The old man stared at Yi Xian. "Do you know who's standing behind my immortal Dao sect?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and smiled. Yi Xian never care about how strong the backing of others is. In any case it's not as strong as mine. As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and the green profound sword flew out. In an instant, the heads of hundreds of experts from the immortal Dao sect flew into the sky, and blood sprayed into the sky like a fountain. It was an extremely bloody scene. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Tu Zong. Tu Zong." Chapter 2148. Slaughter them just like that. After receiving Yi Xian's order, Tu Chen and the others beside him immediately rushed out. In an instant the entire temple was covered in corpses. The old man looked at Yi Xian and said fiercely, "My temple is backed by the Profound Sword Celestial Sect." The Profound Sword Celestial Sect. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. When he'd just attained the Sacred Heart Realm, he'd encountered a mysterious expert who called himself the Profound Sword Celestial Sect as soon as he entered the chaotic world. When he saw Yi Xian's expression, the old man said fiercely, "Looks like you've heard of the Profound Sword Celestial Sect." Yi Xian smiled slightly, "So what?" The old man stared at Yi Xian, "We're from the Profound Sword Celestial Sect." Yi Xian smiled, "Is that all?" The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, "You dare to disregard the Profound Sword Celestial Sect?" Yi Xian opened his palm and the azure sword suddenly flew out. In an instant, all the remaining experts from the immortal Dao sect were slaughtered. Tu Zong. The old man's expression changed greatly. You dare to disregard the Profound Sword Celestial Sect?" Yi Xian ignored the old man and turned to look to the right. There was a woman standing in the clouds tens of thousands of meters away. It was Envoy Nan. Yi Xian looked at Envoy Nan and said, "Miss Envoy Nan, I Yi Xian repay kindness with kindness and enmity with enmity. You helped me that day, so I'm willing to be schemed against by you and repay your kindness. We're truly even. From today onwards, if you dare to scheme against me again, then you're my enemy. Since you're my enemy, then I Yi Xian will not show mercy." With that he turned and left. Gazing at Yi Xian in the distance, the southern ambassador remained silent. As Yi Xian left, Tu Chen and the others hurried to follow him. They didn't kill the old man because they couldn't. If a Saint Heart Realm expert did not want to fight and wanted to leave, they would not be able to kill him. The old man naturally did not dare to stop Yi Xian and the others. What a joke, he was alone now, how could he dare to stop Yi Xian and the others? At this moment the old man calmed down. Yi Xian was not afraid of the Mystic Sword Celestial Sect. If one did not know about the Mystic Sword Immortal Sect, one would be ignorant and fearless. However, Yi Xian knew about the Mystic Sword Immortal Sect and was not afraid. What did this mean? It meant that he was confident. The old man turned to look at Envoy Nan in the distance as if he had thought of something. His face was extremely gloomy. "Envoy Nan, you're underestimating the Mystic Sword Celestial Sect. They were able to dominate the Chaos world for so many years. How could they be fools? You will suffer the consequences of your own actions." With that he turned around and left. The southern envoy remained silent for a long time before he turned around and left. On the other side, Yi Xian left Universe Observatory with everyone and returned to the Profound World. After Yi Xian returned to the Profound World, he immediately brought Tu Chen and the four gods to Xiao Ta. Of course, heavenly execution and earthly extermination were also included. It had to be said that Tu Chen and the others were petrified after entering Xiaota. Time was different. Yi Xian opened his palm and placed all the star veins and heart of the universe that he had collected before in front of everyone. He looked at them and said, "Your goal is the Sacred Heart Realm." The Sacred Heart Realm. Everyone was stunned. It was extremely difficult to attain the Sacred Heart Realm because one had to temper their heart of the universe over and over again. This process was painful and difficult. It could be described as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yi Xian smiled and said, "You don't have confidence?" Tu Chen hesitated for a moment and said, "Young master, it's a bit difficult." Yi Xian smiled and said, 10 years in this world is 1 day in the outside world. I'll give you 1 month, which is 900 years. Is that enough? 900 years. Yi Xian said again, "In these 900 years, I'll satisfy any cultivation resources you need. There's time in cultivation resources." Tu Chen immediately said, "Sure." The 4 gods nodded one after another. At this moment they were a little excited. Opportunity. The Xiaota in front of them was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. Originally, it was not impossible for them to attain the Sacred Heart Realm. After all, to be able to reach this point, their talents were naturally not weak. What did they lack? It was time and cultivation resources. But now Yi Xian was giving them cultivation time and resources. After making arrangements for everyone, Yi Xian left Xiaota. He did not continue cultivating because it was very difficult for him to improve after attaining the Sacred Heart Realm. Moreover, he also wanted to settle down. Yi Xian strolled leisurely in the profound world. After a while he came to a forest. In the bamboo forest, Yi Xian walked slowly. Around him, leaves fell from time to time. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly closed his eyes slowly. Calm the mind. Calm the mind and all things are clear. Focus the mind. Clear the world. After a long time, Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He suddenly stabbed forward lightly. The sword pierced the leaf. In an instant, the leaf withered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Just as it was about to completely turn into ashes, a strange scene suddenly appeared. The leaf suddenly returned to normal, as if it was returning to its youth. Not only that, after the leaf returned to normal, it began to grow roots. Then the roots grew bigger and bigger. After a while, a decimal number appeared in his hand. However, it was not over yet. Not long after, the small tree grew bigger and bigger. In the end, an ancient tree that was several zhang tall appeared in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the ancient tree in front of him. He was silent. Reverse. He'd first utilized the energy of the passage of time to cause the leaf to pass swiftly, and then he'd utilized the energy of reverse time to reverse the leaf. However, it was different this time. He wasn't reversing the future, he was reversing the past. What was reverse future? Reverse future was to slash the future with a single strike of the sword. When he drew his sword at this moment, the future would appear. What was reverse past? It was to recreate the scenes that had passed in the past. Time flowed by. What was the passage of time? The past was a manifestation of the passage of time. When time could be traced, then it could be controlled. Just like space in the past. Those with weak strength probably didn't even know what space was, let alone sense it. However, those with great strength couldn't just tear space apart at will, they could even leap through space. Anything that could be traced could be controlled, including time. Some experts in the past were able to reverse time, but it was extremely short. For example, they could make one's time slightly slower than their opponents. Actually, this was heaven-defying as well. However, as his strength increased, he noticed that such an ability wasn't very threatening to some formidable experts. Because if one could reverse time for a short while, then so could their opponent. However, the reverse he just executed was completely different from the reverse of those experts. What was the source of a leaf? Naturally, it was a tree. If a sword could slash the future, why couldn't it slash the past? Slash it. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's right hand suddenly began to exert force. How could he slash it? Slash the opponent's past with one sword? At first glance, it sounded very mysterious. If a person's past was slashed, then would that person's present still exist? Yi Xian fell silent. He noticed that his head was suddenly aching. A moment later, Yi Xian suddenly looked at the ancient tree in front of him. In the next moment he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, the space-time in front of him directly distorted. After a long time, Yi Xian's entire body became illusory. Then the space-time in which he was in began to abstract, like rippling water. After a few breaths, Yi Xian returned to a quarter of an hour ago. Forcefully reverse. At this moment, the ancient tree in front of him was just a leaf. Yi Xian slashed with his sword. The leaf was directly annihilated. In the next moment, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He noticed that his body and soul were actually disappearing bit by bit. Yi Xian's heart was filled with shock. What happened? Yi Xian did not have time to think too much. He quickly used the green profound sword to return to the present. When he returned to the present, Yi Xian discovered that his body and soul were illusory. Not only that, he also discovered that he did not seem to be in this space-time. Could it be that he had not returned from the past? Yi Xian's heart was filled with shock. What was going on? At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly chuckled. Young master who asked you to play around with time. Now you're confused, aren't you? Yi Xian said in a low voice. Xiao Ta, do you know what my current situation is? Xiao Ta said, I don't know. Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed, because he discovered that his body and soul seemed to be disappearing. Yi Xian's heart was filled with shock. He quickly opened his right hand. Shahan, suppress me. As soon as he finished speaking, the green profound sword merged with him. Bang. When the green profound sword merged with him, Yi Xian discovered that his body and soul that seemed to be disappearing were slowly returning to normal. Seeing this, Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief. However, he discovered that the world around him was not right. He was still not in the original space-time. In other words, he had not returned to the time before he returned to the future. Right now he was still in a strange space-time phase. The future? Or the past? Yi Xian was stunned. He felt that he had played with himself until he was crippled. What was going on? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. Xiao Ta appeared in his hand and Xiao Ta also became illusory. *CK. Xiao Ta suddenly jumped up. *CK. That's impossible. I am the #1 tower in the heavens and realms. How could I disappear? Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta in front of him. Xiao Ta was disappearing at a very terrifying speed. It was not the flow of time. He couldn't tell what kind of power it was. However, he carefully discovered that although Xiao Ta was disappearing, Arya's horn was not disappearing. However, Arya's horn was also undergoing a subtle change. It seemed to be fading. What was going on? Yi Xian was stunned. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said in a trembling voice, Young lord, quickly take me back. Yi Xian said indifferently, Didn't you say that you are the #1 tower in the heavens and realms? Don't be afraid. Xiao Ta was a little panicked. Young lord, if you don't take me back, Tu Chen and the others in the tower will all die. Hearing this, Yi Xian quickly took Xiao Ta back into his body. At this moment, Little Soul suddenly said in a trembling voice, Young lord, I am also disappearing. Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. He discovered that the green profound sword was also disappearing. Yi Xian's face turned pale. *CK. I've gone too far. At this moment, a sword that appeared out of nowhere suddenly fell in front of Yi Xian. The next moment, the time and space around Yi Xian trembled violently. Walking sword. The walking sword suddenly slashed lightly. Chi. Yi Xian suddenly heard a tearing sound as if something was torn apart. At this moment, an extremely terrifying voice suddenly came from all around. Who dares to tear the barrier of time and reverse time? Are you tired of living? *CK. So it's the Destiny Boss. The Time Master greets the Destiny Boss. Destiny Boss, I kowtow to you. Thump. The sound of kowtowing echoed in the endless universe. P.S. Monthly ticket? *CK. I kowtow to you. Chapter 2149. Kowtow. Yi Xian was struck dumb by the sound of the kowtow. What the hell? At that moment, the walking sword suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then held the walking sword. The next moment he felt the world before him shatter, then the world returned to normal. Yi Xian looked around and his eyes were a little dazed. It was still the same bamboo forest, but he had a feeling that it was a lifetime ago. In front of him, the ancient tree from before was gone. What the hell happened? Yi Xian looked at the walking sword in his hand and said softly, Senior. At this moment, the space in front of Yi Xian suddenly trembled slightly. In the next moment, a beam of white light landed in front of Yi Xian. An old man could be vaguely seen in that beam of white light. However, Yi Xian could not see his appearance clearly. But he could see that the old man was kneeling. Time Master? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, Senior? Time Master hurriedly said, You flatter me. You flatter me. Yi Xian was speechless. Time Master hesitated for a moment, then said, Young Master Yi, how did you enter the River of Time? Yi Xian frowned slightly. River of Time? Time Master glanced at Yi Xian, a little cautious. You don't know? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Time Master hesitated for a moment, then said, Young Master Yi, are you at Sacred Heart State now? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Time Master frowned slightly, a flash of doubt in his eyes. How can Sacred Heart State enter the River of Time, and reverse time? Then he suddenly looked at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. When he saw the green profound sword, he understood everything. Young Master Yi cheated to enter the River of Time. Time Master was speechless at that thought. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly asked, Senior, can you introduce me to? The Time Lord suddenly said with a trembling voice, Young Master Yi, please don't call me Senior. I'm afraid of death. Yi Xian was speechless. Then what should I call you? The Time Lord hesitated for a moment and said, Just call me Gong Fu. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Gong Fu, can you tell me what happened to me just now? After a moment of silence, the Time Lord said, Young Master Leaf, time is like a long river. That river is divided into the past, the present, and the future. You just went back to the past. If you just went back to the past, it wouldn't be a big problem. But after going back to the past, you changed the future. Doing that is equivalent to breaking the magical laws of time, and breaking the magical laws of time will cause you to suffer the backlash of time. You were trapped in the seamless world just now. Yi Xian frowned. Seamless realm? The Time Master nodded. Not in the past, not in the future, not in the present. Those who are in the seamless world will be erased by time. Yi Xian glanced at the Time Lord and said, Gong Fu, do you want to stand up and talk? The Time Lord hurriedly shook his head. No. I just like kneeling. Yi Xian was speechless. The Time Lord continued, Young Master Leaf, with your current strength, you can't enter the River of Time and change time. Yi Xian said solemnly, What realm do I need to be able to enter the River of Time and change time? The Time Lord thought about it for a moment and said, At least immortal. Yi Xian frowned slightly. The immortal realm? The Time Lord nodded. Immortal body, immortal soul, and immortal will. Only those three immortals can enter the River of Time. However, they can't change time. In order to change time, one must be immortal. In other words, one's body, soul, and will must be immortal. Only then can one not fear the seamless world and travel freely between the past, present, and future. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression became solemn. According to what you've said, if one can achieve immortal, wouldn't they be invincible? The Time Lord nodded. If one can achieve that, there are indeed few who can rival them in the world. However, to say that they are invincible is a bit too much. Yi Xian looked at the Time Lord and asked, Even that isn't invincible? The Time Lord smiled bitterly. Of course. Yi Xian did not understand. Why? The Time Lord thought about it and said, I am the Time Lord. I control the River of Time. Even if you achieve immortal, as long as I want, I can decide your life or death with a thought. Yi Xian said instinctively, So, you are invincible? No. The Time Lord panicked. I am not invincible. I really am not invincible. Young Master Yi, be careful with what you say. Be careful with what you say. Don't say the word, invincible, lightly. Something bad will happen. Yi Xian was speechless. The Time Master hesitated for a moment and said, No matter how strong you are, there's always someone stronger. I'm nothing really. Yi Xian looked at the Time Lord and said, You are the Time Lord and you control time? The Time Lord nodded. Yes. Yi Xian blinked. For example, my realm is not high enough, but I want to enter the River of Time. Is there any way? The Time Lord was in a difficult position. This? Yi Xian smiled. Is it difficult? The Time Lord nodded. It is difficult. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the walking sword in his hand and smiled. Since it is difficult, I will not force you. Having said that, he turned around and left. At that moment, the Time Lord suddenly asked, Yi, Young Master Yi, you and Destiny are? Yi Xian smiled. She is my sister. Sister. Hearing this, the Time Master was shocked and quickly said, Young Master Yi, I don't think the matter you just mentioned is too difficult. Yi Xian blinked. Not difficult. The Time Lord nodded. Yes. As he said that, he opened his palm and two words floated in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at it. The word was, time. The Lord of Time said, Young Master Leaf, these two characters contain my laws of time. Once they enter your body, all you have to do is activate them, and you'll be able to use them for a short period of time. In that state, even if you enter the seamless world, you won't be erased. However, young Master Yi, your body, soul, and will are not particularly strong. Therefore, after you use the power of time, you will not be able to maintain it for too long. Moreover, after using it, your body will be a little weak. As soon as the Time Lord finished, the two words turned into two rays of golden light and entered Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a while, he found that two words had appeared in his sea of knowledge. At that moment, the Time Lord said, "Young Master Yi, your soul, body, and will are too weak. Remember not to stay in the river of time for too long." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "If I attack and kill my opponent in the past, my opponent will be dead in the future. Am I right?" The Time Lord nodded. "Yes. However, there is a condition." Yi Xian asked, "What condition?" The Time Lord said, "You can't change yourself in the past. You can go back to the past to kill people, but you cannot go back to change yourself." Yi Xian did not understand. "Why?" The Time Lord said, "If you go back to the past and kill someone, you will reverse their time. This will not affect you. However, if you go back to the past and change yourself, let me give you an example. If you go back to the past and kill your father, then the current you will be erased." "Kill my father." Hearing this, Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No, I can't do such a thing." The Time Lord, Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I understand what you mean. If I go back to the past, I cannot change the people and things that are related to me. Otherwise, it will directly affect the current me, right?" The Time Lord nodded. "Yes. Moreover, young Master Yi, you must understand one thing. The past is the past. If you go back to the past, strictly speaking, it is already in the past. To us, it is something that happened in the past. In other words, the past and the present are all illusory. Do not think about living in the past. If you do, you will be erased by the current time laws." Yi Xian frowned. "The present time laws?" The Time Lord nodded. "The past has the past time laws, the present has the present time laws, and the future has the future time laws. Of course, strictly speaking, they are all time laws. Just like you, the past you, the present you, the future you. They are all still you, just at different stages of you." Hearing this, Yi Xian understood. The Time Lord continued, "Also, in the river of time, the future cannot be easily explored. You can slash the future with your sword, but you cannot go to the future." Yi Xian did not understand. "Why is that?" The Time Lord smiled. "The past and the present have already happened. They are certain, but the future has not happened. In other words, the future is uncertain. Moreover, the future is multifaceted. For example, a person can have thousands of lives in the future. As for which life it will be in the end, it depends on the choice that person makes now. Therefore, the future and the present are connected. There is a direct causal relationship. If you choose to go to the future, although you can go there, that future might not be the final future." At this point, his expression became somewhat solemn. Once you go to the future to do something that is not the final future, for example, if you decide to eat in 15 minutes now, but after you go to the future, you don't choose to eat, then your timeline will be messed up, and you will be forever lost in the future space-time until you are erased by the great Tao of time. And the you in this space-time will disappear because no one can appear in the present and the future at the same time, not even me." Yi Xian fell into deep thought. The Time Lord continued, "We must be respectful towards the future." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Can Qinger travel to the future?" The Time Lord was silent for a long time before he said, "She should be playing with something more advanced." Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 2150. Yi Xian fell silent. He had to admit he was shocked. He had come into contact with the Tao of time in the past, but not much. The past. Now. The future. Yi Xian suddenly discovered that the Tao of time was more complex and profound than he had imagined. Recollecting his thoughts, Yi Xian looked at the Time Lord. "Senior, you mentioned immortal physique, immortal soul, immortal will, and eternal immortality. Are these the realms above the Sacred Heart?" The Time Lord nodded, "Yes." Yi Xian's curiosity was piqued. "Who created these realms?" The Time Lord smiled. "There are no paths in this world, but as long as someone walks it, there will be a path." Yi Xian fell silent. "Senior, only eternal immortals can enter the river of time and slash the past, am I right?" The Time Lord shook his head. "Even eternal immortals cannot do it. To enter the river of time and slash the past, one has to go against not only the past but also the laws of time. Once you are discovered by the laws of time, they will erase you. Of course, some stronger experts will use some mystiques to conceal their aura, preventing the laws of time from discovering them. However, those who can do this are few and far between. Yi Xian blinked. Senior, will I be discovered? The Time Lord smiled. Young Master Yi, they are sneaking around, but you are out in the open. After all, I am the Time Lord in charge of the laws of time. Yi Xian laughed heartily. Many thanks. He hurried to help the Time Lord up. Get up. With me here, Qing will not harm you. The Time Lord hesitated, then stood up. After standing up, he was still flustered. He glanced at the Dao walking sword and seeing no reaction from it, he heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, I am now at the Sacred Heart realm. To reach the immortal physique realm, is there any cultivation method? The Time Master thought about it and took out a thick ancient book. Young Master Yi, this is the immortal tome. It was created by an immortal emperor. I think it's pretty good. It should be suitable for you. Yi Xian hurriedly put it away and then he said, Then I won't hold back. The Lord of Time smiled and was just about to say something when suddenly he frowned and turned his head. Not far away, an old man slowly walked over. Yi Xian frowned when he saw the old man. This old man was the Saint Heart expert from the immortal Dao world. Beside the old man was a middle-aged man. The elder from the immortal Dao temple stood behind the middle-aged man with a respectful expression on his face. Yi Xian glanced at the man. Obviously, someone from the Dark Sword Immortal sect had arrived. The middle-aged man glanced at the Time Master beside Yi Xian, then looked at Yi Xian. Are you Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The middle-aged man chuckled. I was extremely curious about you before I came. After all, there aren't many in this world who dare to disrespect my Dark Sword Immortal sect. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he moved closer to the Time Master. Senior, do you know of the Dark Sword Immortal sect? The Time Master shook his head. I haven't. Yi Xian blinked. Then are you afraid? The Time Master was speechless. He noticed that young Master Yi seemed to have misunderstood his strength. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man suddenly glanced at the Time Master. Yi Xian, is he your backer? The Time Master glanced coldly at the middle-aged man. Is young Master Ye's name something you can call? As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man's figure suddenly became illusory. Not only that, but almost in an instant, the middle-aged man's entire body directly aged as if he was about to wither. They were stunned. Both the middle-aged man and the old man were stunned. What's going on? Yi Xian glanced at the Time Master and he was extremely shocked. Time flowed by. This was the true flow of time. The Time Master was quite ferocious. The middle-aged man looked at the Time Master with astonishment. Who are you? The Time Master's face was expressionless. He flicked his sleeve, and the middle-aged man instantly transformed into a pile of dust and vanished. He'd been completely wiped out. The old man at the Saint Heart state looked at the Time Master with terror on his face, and his mind had gone blank. He instantly killed a Saint Heart state expert? How could that be possible? Yi Xian spoke abruptly. Senior, you, the Time Master hesitated for a moment before he said, Young Master Yi, I'm actually not that weak. All these years I've only been beaten by a big shot from the mandate of heaven. He was being very tactful. Yi Xian asked instinctively. Senior, your strength is so terrifying, so why can't you defeat Qing'er? The Time Master fell silent for a long time before he said, I want to know as well. Yi Xian. The Time Master suddenly looked at the old man. The old man's face fell and he turned to flee. He was very fast, and he vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. But a moment later, he mysteriously appeared in front of Yi Xian and the Time Master, and then his body gradually became illusory and transparent. The old man was horrified. How is this possible? The Time Master shook his head slightly. Ignorant. With that, the old man was completely wiped out. Yi Xian. The Time Master turned to look at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, I have to go. There are many things I need to deal with. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Senior, I don't know when we can meet again. Do you want to leave me a greeting gift? The Time Master's expression froze. Yi Xian looked at the Time Master sincerely. The Time Master hesitated for a moment, and then opened his palm, and a token appeared in his hand. This is the Time Master token. With this token, if you meet the Time Messengers in the future, you can command them. The Time Master token. Yi Xian quickly put away the Time Master token and then said, Thank you, Senior. The Time Master said in a low voice, Young Master Yi, remember you can't stay in the river of time for too long with your current strength, especially if you want to go against time. It will consume a lot of energy, and your body hasn't reached the immortal realm yet. As for the future, don't go there yourself. Your sword can because it was forged by Senior Destiny, so there won't be any accidents. But you can't, so remember. Yi Xian nodded slightly. Senior, I will remember your reminder. The Time Master smiled. Farewell, young Master Yi. With that, his body became illusory and was about to vanish. Yi Xian suddenly thought of something and then asked, Senior, how do you know Qing'er? The Time Master's expression became unnatural, and he smiled sheepishly. It's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. After saying that, he disappeared. Yi Xian looked around, but he couldn't sense the Time Master. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. From the Time Master's attitude toward Qing'er, he must have been taught a lesson by Qing'er. Otherwise he wouldn't be so afraid of Qing. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian looked at the Time Master in his hand, and the corners of his mouth curled up. In the following time, Yi Xian continued to practice /lifespan, /future and /past. With the word time given to him by the Time Master, he found that his control over the power of time flow and the power of time reversal had become more adept. Their power had also increased, especially /past. /past was more terrifying than /future, and it was also more bizarre. Some of the stronger experts could still predict the future of /future. After all, some experts had the ability to predict fortune and misfortune. However, /past was different. Was /past something that had already happened? Unless the other party could return to the past like him. Only then would he be able to defend against it. But to return to the past, only eternal immortal realm experts could do it. To him, the Sacred Heart realm was nothing much. The only pity was that the Walking Dao sword had run away again. He wanted to keep the Walking Dao sword for research. At the crucial moment, he could use the Walking Dao sword to scare others. 10 days later, Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly left Xiaota. As soon as he left Xiaota, he frowned. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The sky in the distance suddenly split open, and in the next moment, an extremely terrifying aura swept down from the crack. In an instant, the entire profound world was in an uproar. Countless experts in the profound world raised their heads to look at the sky, their eyes filled with doubt and shock. Was someone going to attack the profound world? At this moment, an old man slowly walked out from the crack in space. The old man wore a loose black robe and held an iron sword in his left hand. His expression was cold. Swordsman. Yi Xian looked at the old man calmly. The old man looked down at Yi Xian. You destroyed the immortal Dao sect? Yi Xian glanced at the sword in the old man's hand and nodded. The old man stared at Yi Xian. Did you know that the immortal Dao temple was a subsidiary force of my mystic sword immortal sect? Yi Xian shook his head. The old man narrowed his eyes. Didn't know? Yi Xian smiled. I didn't know at first, but I found out later. The old man stared at Yi Xian. You still dared to destroy it when you knew. Yi Xian smiled. When I, Yi Xian, do things, it doesn't matter if I dare or not, it only matters if I want to or not. I wanted to destroy it, so I destroyed it. Everyone was speechless. When the old man heard Yi Xian's words, he was so angry that he laughed. There's no such thing as 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 there's only, there's no such thing as there's no such thing as there's only, there's no such thing as there's no such thing as there's no such thing as there's only, there's no such thing as 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 there's only, there's no such thing as there's no such thing as there's no such thing as. There's no such thing as 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 there. As soon as he finished speaking, the iron sword in his hand suddenly slashed down from the sky, and it seemed like it could tear the world apart. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian's expression was calm as he allowed the sword to slash into his head. Bang! Everyone watched as the iron sword entered Yi Xian's body. In the next moment, a powerful aura swept out from within Yi Xian. He absorbed it. The old man was stunned by this scene. Yi Xian took a deep breath greedily, and then he gazed at the old man and grinned. May I ask if everyone in your mystic sword immortal sect cultivates the sword? The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yes. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, I slaughtered the immortal Dao temple. If your mystic sword immortal sect isn't satisfied, then feel free to take revenge. No matter how many come, I'm invincible. Do as you please. He paused for a moment before he continued, I'm serious this time. Chapter 2151. I'm invincible, you can do whatever you want. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the old man's expression became extremely ugly. Arrogant. Too arrogant. The old man stared at Yi Xian. Do you know what you're saying? Below, Yi Xian smiled slightly and turned to leave. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the distance. He left. The old man frowned slightly. He wanted to say something, but in the next moment he seemed to sense something. His pupils suddenly shrank, and in the blink of an eye, his entire body became illusory. The old man looked at Yi Xian in horror and said with a trembling voice, "What did you do to me?" Yi Xian looked at the old man and did not say anything. Over. In that instant he had gone to the future to kill the other party. When he used the future for the first time, he found its biggest weakness and biggest advantage. What weakness? That was, the future could not be used on people who were too much stronger than him. Because he could not kill the other party now, he could not kill the other party even if he went back to the past not too long ago. With his current strength he could not go back too far in the past. Otherwise he could go back tens of millions of years ago. Now he could only go back to a month ago at most. After that, his body would not be able to support it. 1 month was not very useful because if he could not beat the other party now, he might not be able to beat the other party a month ago. In the past it was not that the other party could not fight back. Of course, the advantage was that it was unexpected. It was more mysterious than the future, and the other party could not predict it at all. Moreover, he also found the most terrifying thing. When fighting with others, he could go back to the past, and him who went back to the past knew what the other party was going to do next. It was like cheating. Not only that, he also found that when he went to kill the other party from the long river of the world, the other party was completely dumbfounded. Because there was also a him in the past, the other party was not on guard against the him in the future. In other words, the him in the present could cooperate with the him in the past. Two people working together. However, he had to discuss it with his future self first. For example, right now he could confirm that he would attack in 15 minutes, and then he could attack immediately, and 15 minutes later, when he thought up to here, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes, and then he suddenly stabbed with his sword. A strand of sword light suddenly pierced through the space between the old man's brows. At practically the exact same moment, another strand of sword light appeared out of nowhere and directly pierced through the old man's brows. There were 2 sword lights between the old man's eyebrows. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian immediately became excited. It really worked. He was cooperating perfectly with his future self. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's body suddenly became illusory. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he saw this. Damn it. The time laws are trying to erase me. Yi Xian hurriedly activated the 2 words that the Time Master had given him. As the 2 words were activated, his body gradually returned to normal. Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like his actions were truly too heaven-defying, so the time laws didn't allow such a thing to happen. Fortunately, the Time Master had opened a back door for him. Fortunately, he had the green profound sword. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to accomplish this at all. Needless to say, Yi Xian was very excited at this moment. This slash of the past was many times more terrifying than slash of the future. So long as he didn't encounter an expert that was too monstrous, then his slash of the past was practically invincible. Meanwhile, the old man in the distance spoke with a trembling voice. How did you do it? Yi Xian glanced at the old man. Do you want to know? The old man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian grinned. I won't tell you. Oh. The old man spat out a mouthful of blood and died on the spot. After the old man died, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment he suddenly realized how terrifying the Time Tao was. Once someone mastered this Time Tao, it was truly too heaven-defying. Collecting his thoughts, Yi Xian returned to Xiaota. Then he took out the Immortal Tome. Although he hadn't reached the Eternal Immortal Realm, he could do things that the Eternal Immortal Realm couldn't. It could be said that he had skipped several major realms. Actually, he didn't need to cultivate realms. In fact, he wasn't cultivating realms. He was studying the Immortal Tome to improve his divine soul, body, and will. The improvement of these 3 aspects would determine how long he could stay in the river of time. His ultimate goal was the Time Tao. In short, he was cultivating 4 aspects: sword Tao, divine soul, body, and will. Immortal body. Yi Xian began to cultivate his body first. What was immortal? It was eternal, indestructible, and everlasting. When he chose to cultivate the immortal body, he found an awkward problem. Star vein. No, it was the star god vein. It was a spiritual vein that surpassed the star vein. The purity of the star god vein was more than 10 times that of an ordinary star vein. Only such a pure spiritual energy star vein could allow his body to undergo a qualitative change. Moreover, 1 star god vein wasn't enough. He had to prepare at least 100. Besides that, he needed many treasures of heaven and earth that he hadn't even heard of. For example, the immortal fruit, the spirit of heaven and earth. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. Damn it. Cultivation wasn't just a competition of talent, it was also a competition of money. Most of the time, money was even more important than talent. No money? Cultivate my ass. Just like this moment. Without the star god Vane, he, the #1 genius of all time, could only watch helplessly. Earn money. Yi Xian sighed softly and then he left Xiao Ta. He opened his palm and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. It was the spatial ring of the old man from the mystic sword immortal sect. There were only star veins in the spatial ring but no star god veins. Yi Xian's headache grew even worse when he saw this. Because it meant that he might not be able to come into contact with the star god Vane. The immortal treasure pavilion? Yi Xian shook his head. He didn't really want to go look for the southern envoy. Right at this moment Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and looked over. A middle-aged man was walking over slowly from the horizon. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Needless to say, it was definitely from the mystic sword immortal sect. The middle-aged man suddenly appeared before Yi Xian, and he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm. The middle-aged man grinned. Young Master Yi, my name is Xiao Ming, and I'm the Grand Elder of the Mystic Sword Immortal Sect. Yi Xian said with a smile, Are you here alone? The middle-aged man nodded. Young Master Yi, don't worry. I came alone, Yi Xian suddenly interrupted the middle-aged man. You misunderstood me. I meant that you can call more people over. The smile on the middle-aged man's face instantly vanished when he heard this, and he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm and extremely composed. At this moment, the middle-aged man's heart suddenly sank. Yi Xian smiled, Sir, you can call more people over now. Xiao Ming hesitated for a moment before he said, Young Master Yi, I'm here to reason with you. Reason with me? Yi Xian frowned slightly. What reason? Don't. I first killed your subsidiary Immortal Taoist Temple, and then I killed numerous members of your Mystic Sword Immortal Sect. I'm obviously not giving your Mystic Sword Immortal Sect any face. Moreover, I'm looking down on your Mystic Sword Immortal Sect. How can you tolerate this? Don't tolerate it. Hurry up and call more people over to deal with me. Call as many as you can. It's best if you summon your ancestors. The middle-aged man was dumbstruck. What the fuck? What kind of trick is this? Yi Xian's expression turned cold. Are you sure you won't call more people over? Xiao Ming hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, I'm here to reason with you. Reason with me? We're all civilized people. How can we do such a barbaric thing? Don't you think so? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I slaughtered your subsidiary Immortal Taoist Temple. Xiao Ming said immediately, It was the Immortal Taoist Temple that offended young Master Yi first. They deserved it. Yi Xian continued, I killed 2 Sacred Heart experts of your Mystic Sword Immortal Sect. Xiao Ming suddenly said, That was a spar. A spar. Young Master Yi sparred with 2 of our experts and then you accidentally killed them? Accidents are inevitable in a spar. We understand. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it. How can you understand that? He wasn't used to this sudden change of routine. At this time Xiao Ming continued, Young Master Yi, I'm here with sincerity and friendship. Although we had some misunderstandings before, I believe those misunderstandings will vanish under our friendly communication. Then he paused and said, In this world, everything can disappear but not justice and order. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ming glanced at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a while and then said, Young Master Yi, I wonder who your teacher is. Obviously he wanted to inquire about Yi Xian's background. Yi Xian said with a smile, Elder Xiao, I Yi Xian don't have any backing really? Xiao Ming smiled and said in his heart, I don't believe you. Yi Xian said again, Elder Xiao, are you sure you won't call more people to beat me up? Xiao Ming shook his head quickly. No. Young Master Yi, I just said that I'm here to clear up the misunderstanding. Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, Do you have star god meridians? Hearing this, Xiao Ming's pupils suddenly constricted. Young Master Yi, you know about star god meridians? Star god meridians. Xiao Ming had to admit that he was very shocked at this moment. Because even some old monsters of Mystic Sword Immortal Sect didn't know about the existence of star god meridians. Because it was too precious. And he only knew about star god meridians because of his position. Star god meridians were necessary to achieve the legendary immortal body. Could it be that young Master Yi has an immortal body realm expert behind him? Thinking of this, Xiaoming broke out in a cold sweat. Yi Xian suddenly asked again, "Young Master Xiao, do you have one?" Xiaoming looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated for a while and then said, "No." "No." Yi Xian thought for a while and then said, "Then do you know where I can find one? I'll go grab some." "Oh no, I'll go borrow some." Xiaoming's expression froze. Chapter 2152. Xiaoming's expression was quite unsightly when he heard Yi Xian. "Rah. Fortunately, I didn't mention that the Dark Sword Immortal sect has a divine star range. Otherwise, Yi Xian would have probably gone straight to the Dark Sword Immortal sect." Arrogant? He didn't think that Yi Xian was arrogant. Yi Xian had killed 2 Saint Heart experts of the Dark Sword Immortal sect. Moreover, they'd been instantly killed. Moreover, Yi Xian hadn't shown any fear towards the Dark Sword Immortal sect since the beginning. What did that mean? It meant that Yi Xian wasn't afraid of the Dark Sword Immortal sect at all. There was someone behind him. How could he be so arrogant without that person? Meanwhile, Yi Xian spoke abruptly, "Elder Xiao, does your Dark Sword Immortal sect really not have a divine star range?" "Don't worry, I Yi Xian am not a bandit. I'm just asking." Elder Xiao shook his head repeatedly, "No. We really don't. How could my Dark Sword Immortal sect possibly have such a divine treasure?" Yi Xian spoke seriously, "I really don't." Elder Xiao spoke seriously as well, "Young Master Yi, we really don't have one." Yi Xian was speechless. Why is he like that? It's like I'm a bandit. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian asked, "Elder Xiao, what's the cultivation of your sect master? His body is immortal? Or his soul?" Elder Xiao glanced at Yi Xian and said, "His body is immortal." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "Only his body is immortal? Only?" Elder Xiao's face froze. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Your sect master is only at the immortal realm, yet your Dark Sword Immortal sect dares to act so arrogantly? Aren't you afraid of bringing calamity upon yourself?" Elder Xiao hesitated for a short while before he said, "Young Master Yi, is his body at the immortal realm very weak?" Yi Xian replied with a question, "Isn't it weak?" Elder Xiao glanced at Yi Xian, "I wonder what cultivation realm young Master Yi is at." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "I'm no longer in the realm." Hearing this, Elder Xiao frowned, "Not in the realm?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, "I'm an outsider and you're insiders. Understand?" "Elder Xiao," Yi Xian suddenly said, "Elder Xiao, how about you take me to your Dark Sword Immortal sect?" Elder Xiao looked at Yi Xian warily. "Young Master Yi, what are you trying to do?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "I will personally go and have a chat with your sect leader." Elder Xiao hesitated for a moment before he said, "What do you want to talk about?" Yi Xian walked over to Elder Xiao and said with a smile, "Elder Xiao, you can't represent your Profound Sword Immortal sect. I'm going to your Profound Sword Immortal sect because I want to have a talk with your sect master. If the talk goes well, then we can all get along peacefully. If not, then I'll annihilate your Profound Sword Immortal sect." "Elder Xiao," Yi Xian said with a smile, "let's go." Xiaoming fell silent for a long time, and then he brought Yi Xian with him as he turned around and vanished into the horizon. Xiaoming remained silent all along the way. Just as Yi Xian had said, he really couldn't represent the entire Profound Sword Immortal sect. If they wanted to get along peacefully, then Yi Xian had to talk to the sect master of the Profound Sword Immortal sect. Before long, Yi Xian and Elder Xiao arrived at a world. The chaotic world. After entering the chaotic world, Yi Xian immediately frowned. He'd come to this place when he'd just attained the Sacred Heart state. The Profound Sword Immortal sect was in the chaotic world. Obviously, the Profound Sword Immortal sect had occupied the resources of this world. Before long, Xiaoming and Yi Xian stopped. Not far away from them were hundreds of floating halls, and every single one of them was majestic and extremely luxurious. Not far away from them was a huge sword that hung upside down. The huge sword was hundreds of meters long, and it stood towering in the sky. It was extremely domineering. The Profound Sword Immortal sect. Xiaoming turned to look at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, please?" "Please." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and then he followed Xiaoming towards the distance. Along the way, Yi Xian noticed that swordsmen flew by on swords from time to time. The weakest of these swordsmen was actually at the Sacred Heart state. The weakest was at the Sacred Heart state. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. At this moment, he suddenly understood why the Profound Sword Immortal sect was so arrogant. They're really strong. A thought suddenly arose in Yi Xian's mind. There are so many powerful swordsmen in the Profound Sword Immortal sect. If they attack me together, does that mean I don't need to use the Star God Meridian? When he thought of this, Yi Xian was instantly excited. I can give it a try. At this moment, Xiaoming suddenly stopped. A middle-aged man appeared not far away from him. The middle-aged man wore a black robe and carried a sword on his back. Xiaoming bowed slightly. Sect Master. He was the sect master of the Profound Sword Immortal sect, Xiancong. Meanwhile, a few dozen swordsmen suddenly appeared in the surroundings. All of them were at the Sacred Heart state. Xiancong gazed at Yi Xian and remained silent. Yi Xian grinned. All of you attack me together. Attack me together. As soon as these words were spoken, an uproar arose. Damn it. Attack me together? The swordsmen were infuriated. Meanwhile, one of the swordsmen suddenly charged forward and slashed his sword at Yi Xian. All of them were swordsmen, so how arrogant were they? How could they endure Yi Xian's disdain? Yi Xian didn't dodge and he just allowed the sword to slash at Yi Xian's head. Bang! As soon as the sword came into contact with Yi Xian's head, it was instantly absorbed. All the swordsmen were stunned when they witnessed this scene. As for Xiancong, he frowned slightly. Yi Xian looked at the dumbfounded swordsman in front of him. That's it? That's it. The swordsman was enraged when he heard this. How dare you? As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly opened his palm. The next moment, a sword light suddenly slashed down from the sky. It was extremely fast and in the blink of an eye, it arrived above Yi Xian's head. Wherever this sword light passed, time and space were directly set ablaze. It was extremely terrifying. Yi Xian still didn't dodge and he just let the sword light slash at him. Bang! Under the swordsman's gaze, the sword light directly entered Yi Xian's body, and then it was completely absorbed by him. All the swordsmen were petrified on the spot. In front of Yi Xian, the old man looked at Yi Xian in horror. You? Yi Xian glanced at the old man. That's it? The old man was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly glanced at the swordsman, and his expression was calm. I have no intention of targeting all of you. However, the Dark Sword Immortal sect only has this much? Just this much? The expressions of the swordsman instantly turned unsightly. Yi Xian suddenly said, There's no need for all of you to continue watching. Attack together. Attack together. As soon as these words were spoken, how could the swordsman endure it? They were about to attack when Xiancong suddenly said, Stop. The swordsmen hesitated for a moment when they heard Xiancong, but they didn't choose to attack in the end. Xiancong gazed at Yi Xian. Young Master Ye's physique is very special. Yi Xian walked slowly towards Xiancong. You have two choices. The first is to kill me, and the second is to slaughter your Dark Sword Immortal sect. Make your choice. If you choose the first, then you can summon your ancestor right now. I have no intention of targeting all of you, but to be honest, all of you are trash in my eyes. Trash. How presumptuous. In the distance, a swordsman at the Saint Heart realm was truly unable to endure it any longer, and he was about to attack. But in the next moment, he seemed to have sensed something, and his pupils constricted. A sword had suddenly pierced his throat. A strand of blood sprayed from his throat. Future severing. Presently, he was even more skilled at future severing. With a single slash, he could kill an enemy at any time in the next 3 days. The old man's sudden death caused the expressions of all the swordsmen here to change drastically. What's going on? He was instantly killed? At this moment, the expressions of all the swordsmen here had become solemn, and there was even fear in them. The sword on Xiancong's back that stood before Yi Xian was trembling slightly. At this moment, Xiancong was shocked as well, because he wasn't able to see through Yi Xian's cultivation at all. Yi Xian looked Xiancong in the eyes. 3 breaths of time. If you don't give me a satisfactory answer in 3 breaths of time, then I'll slaughter your sect. Slaughter the sect. Xiancong's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard this. Since it's like that, then I'll seek guidance from young Master Yi. As he spoke, the sword on his back suddenly flew out, and then it slashed directly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian still didn't dodge. When he saw that Yi Xian didn't dodge, Xiancong's pupils constricted, and he was about to retreat. But right at this moment he seemed to have sensed something and terror appeared in his eyes. At this moment, a sword suddenly stabbed into the back of his head. Xiancong was instantly frozen in place by this strike. Future severing. Xiancong suddenly retreated. A ray of light flashed and he'd retreated 30 kilometers away. After Xiancong stopped, he stared at Yi Xian. I have an eternal body. Your sword isn't able to injure me at all. He hadn't finished speaking when his body shattered into pieces, and his soul swiftly dispersed. Xianzang gazed at Yi Xian with terror. "You. What sort of sword is that?" Yi Xian's expression was calm. "It's just an ordinary sword. However, because I'm formidable, it's formidable as well." Little Soul was speechless. Xianzang suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, we can talk." Yi Xian shook his head. "You've already fought to such an extent, so what's there to talk about?" As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the green sword directly absorbed Xianzang's soul before returning to his grasp. The surroundings were deathly silent. "The sect master of the Dark Sword Immortal sect is gone just like that?" Elder Shao broke out in cold sweat. "So this young Master Yi wasn't bragging, and he really is. Fortunately, I acted humbly just now. Otherwise I would have perished by now, right?" Yi Xian glanced at the swordsman and said, "At this moment, all of you have two choices. The first is to attack and avenge your sect master. The second is to submit to me." All of them fell silent. Yi Xian smiled. "What? Do all of you think that I want all of you to submit to me? To be honest, all of you are a burden to me if you submit to me." Meanwhile, Elder Shao suddenly bowed respectfully. "I'm willing to submit to young Master Yi." Yi Xian glanced at Elder Shao, and then he opened his palm, causing a ray of white light to suddenly enter the center of Elder Zhao's forehead. A short moment later, Elder Shao seemed to have obtained something, and he immediately knelt down and spoke with a trembling voice. "Thank you, young Master Yi. What did I obtain?" The sword cultivators at the side were stupefied. Yi Xian spoke indifferently. "This is the first chapter of the eternal ceremony. So long as you have sufficient resources, then you can rely on it to attain the eternal body realm. Even if you don't have any resources, it can still improve your strength greatly." The eternal ceremony? The swordsmen were instantly quite excited when they heard this. Meanwhile, some of the swordsmen hurriedly bowed respectfully. "We're willing to follow young Master Yi." Yi Xian suddenly turned to look at Elder Shao. "Can the Dark Sword Immortal sect summon its ancestor?" Elder Shao hesitated for a moment before he said, "Yes. Our ancestor once left a strand of his soul behind." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Summon the ancestor." Elder Shao was slightly stunned, and then he said, "Why?" Yi Xian smiled. "I want to fight him and see if he can resist a single attack of my sword." Elder Shao hesitated for a moment before he said, "Young Master Yi, I heard that our ancestor's strength is very formidable." Yi Xian grinned, and it was a very composed smile. "If he attacks twice, then I, Yi Xian, will stand upside down and have diarrhea." All of them were speechless. Elder Shao thought for a moment, and then he turned around and left. It didn't take long for a ray of light to suddenly shoot into the sky from within the Dark Sword Immortal sect, and then a swordsman suddenly appeared within it. It was a swordsman in a green robe. Yi Xian's face instantly froze when he saw the swordsman. The experts of the Dark Sword Immortal sect were stunned when they saw the swordsman. Why is this swordsman so similar to young Master Yi? P.S. Let me recommend a book to all of you. It's much better than The Only Sword. It's called Invincible Sword Domain, and you'll be able to find it right away. The reason I've been updating so slowly lately is because I've been reading this book. I've been so engrossed in it that I've forgotten to eat and sleep. Chapter 2153. Father. At this moment Yi Xian was stunned. Damn it. The ancestor of the Profound Sword Immortal sect is my father? We fought for so long, yet he's actually on our side? In the sky, the azure-robed man looked down at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "I heard everything you said just now. Stand upside down and have diarrhea. TSK. That would definitely be a sight to behold." Yi Xian was speechless. The experts of the Profound Sword Immortal sect hurriedly bowed. "Greetings, ancestor." The green-clothed man glanced at them with a calm expression. "I'm not considered to be your founding ancestor." All of them were speechless. Yi Xian gazed at the green-clothed man. "Father? What's your relationship with the Profound Sword Immortal sect?" The green-clothed man smiled. "I gave them some pointers all those years ago. So that's why." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "We fought for so long, yet he's actually on our side." The green-clothed man glanced at Yi Xian. "You've come into contact with the Tao of Time?" Yi Xian nodded. The green-clothed man roared with laughter. "You've improved quite quickly." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, "How far away are we?" The green-clothed man blinked. "It's not very far. It's just a little bit away." "A little bit." Yi Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this, and he smiled. "I'll work hard." The green-clothed man nodded. "Just work hard. Yi Xian was quite curious. Father, what are you and big brother doing right now? The green-clothed man smiled. We're going around. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Father, you have to be careful. I haven't even fulfilled my filial duties, so you have to be careful. The green-clothed man roared with laughter. Don't worry. So long as I don't want to die, then no one in this world can kill me. You, on the other hand, have to be careful. Don't make me have to send my son off one day. All of them had strange expressions on their faces. They were father and son. However, this pair of father and son was kind and filial. Yi Xian said with smile, I have Qing, under normal circumstances I won't die. The green-robed man said sternly, it's not good to rely on others. You should learn from your father. Your father killed his way out. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Xiao Ta said that you were often hung up and beaten, and your soul was often ignited. You were in a very difficult situation. Xiao Ta suddenly jumped up. Seek. Young master. The green-robed man narrowed his eyes. Yi Xian hurriedly added, it also said that you were beaten by Qing before? Inside Yi Xian's body, Xiao Ta suddenly said in a trembling voice, Young lord, you idiot, you've made a big mistake. In the sky, the green-robed man suddenly opened his palm, and a wisp of sword light suddenly flew down. The target was Yi Xian. Yi Xian seemed to have expected this, and the corners of his mouth slightly raised. When he saw his father said that there was only a little distance between them. He wanted to fight with his father. He was not very confident in fighting with his father's real body, but he was confident in fighting with his father's avatar. Today Yi Xian was going to kill his father. Facing the green-robed man, even if it was just a small avatar, Yi Xian did not dare to have the slightest bit of carelessness. His first move was a direct slash. Not only that, at this moment he also made a move, letting his future self slash the past, two working together. His strongest sword. When this sword slashed out, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth slightly raised. This was because he realized that the green-robed man did not seem to expect that his future self had already made a move. He did not defend against the green-robed man's sword. In his opinion, his father's avatar should not be able to break through his invincible sword body. His sword body should be able to defend against this sword. Take it head-on. An injury in exchange for a life. Almost at the same time, Xiao Ta suddenly charged out of Yi Xian's body and directly collided with the green-robed man's avatar. The man in the tower had discussed it. In the sky, Xiao Ta laughed. I have been a tower for tens of thousands of years. Today I, Xiao Ta, will defy the heavens and change my fate. Master, from now on, don't call me Xiao Ta, please call me Tower Master. The green-robed man looked at Xiao Ta, who was colliding with him, and his expression was calm. Below, the green-robed man's sword energy suddenly pierced between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Bang! Yi Xian's body shook violently, and then it directly turned into ashes. At the same time, his soul was instantly slashed hundreds of thousands of meters away, and as soon as he stopped, he fell directly into a boundless abyss. Yi Xian's head was buzzing. He did not resist it? My invincible sword body did not resist it? Yi Xian hurriedly looked at the green-robed man in the distance. At the end of his vision, his sword had already slashed in front of the green-robed man, but his green profound sword was directly caught by two fingers of the green-robed man. And that sword of his in the future did not appear from the beginning to the end. What's going on? Just as this doubt appeared in Yi Xian's mind, the next moment, he felt that his soul directly became illusory. What's going on? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. In the distance, just as Xiao Ta collided in front of the green-robed man, the green-robed man in the distance pointed with his fingers. Bang! Xiao Ta shook violently and the body of the tower directly cracked. Then, followed by an extremely mournful cry, Xiao Ta directly flew out of sight. The green-robed man looked at the green profound sword in front of him, and the green profound sword trembled. I was forced. The green-robed man smiled slightly and then released his fingers. Little Soul hurriedly flew in front of Yi Xian, and said in a trembling voice, Young master, it seems that we can't beat him. Yi Xian. The green-robed man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Is it fun? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Father, how did you defend against that slash of mine in the past? The green-robed man shook his head. You fool. Yi Xian. The green-robed man said again, To be precise, it is the future you who slashed the past. You let the future you slash the past and then at this moment you do it. I have to say this idea of yours is quite unique and indeed quite good. Unfortunately you have overlooked one thing. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What?" The green-robed man said, "Strength. You have underestimated your father's strength. To put it simply, the Tao of Time can't do anything to your father. Not to mention you, even the Time Master would have to kneel in front of your father." "Yi Xian," the green-robed man said again, "however, your sword just now is indeed quite good. Now that you are working with your future self, this sword can kill people who are several realms higher than you." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Father, do you think there is anything that needs to be improved on?" The green-robed man blinked. "Think about it yourself." Yi Xian's face darkened immediately. "Damn it. This is my biological father? Biological father." The green-robed man patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly. "Don't be unfair. What you comprehend yourself is the best. It's like cutting flesh with a knife. Others tell you that cutting flesh with a knife will hurt, but if you don't cut yourself, you won't know what pain feels like." Yi Xian glanced at the green-robed man. "Father, are you fooling me?" The green-robed man. Yi Xian asked again, "What is above the Tao of Time?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "Let's play with time first." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Father, you only cultivate the sword, right?" The green-robed man nodded. Yi Xian was silent. The green-robed man smiled slightly. "I know what you are thinking. You are afraid that your cultivation is too mixed and it will affect the Tao of Sword, right?" Yi Xian nodded. The green-robed man smiled and said, "Don't think that way. Everyone's life is different. Just like you and me, although we both have the crazy demon bloodline, your crazy demon bloodline is different from mine. Do you know why?" Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Why?" Actually, he had wanted to ask this question for a long time. The green-robed man said in a low voice, "Personality. Our personalities are different. Therefore, although we have the same bloodline, we are different. Including the Tao of Sword. Father didn't teach you the Tao of Sword because you already have your own Tao of Sword. You are not suitable to walk our path." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "My own Tao of Sword?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "Haven't you noticed? Your Tao of Sword is different from our Tao of Sword." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "What Tao of Sword?" The green-robed man blinked. "Shameless." Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. The green-robed man said, "I am not teasing you. A thick-skinned person is broad-minded. A broad-minded person's sword is broad-minded. There are millions of Tao of Sword in the world. There is no need for you to learn other people's Tao of Sword. Walk your own path. Understand?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Father, are you serious?" The green-robed man laughed. "You are my son. Why would I lie to you?" Yi Xian was skeptical. The green-robed man said, "I know a place where you can train your Tao of Sword. Are you interested in going?" Yi Xian was slightly curious. "What place?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "The Burial God Territory. I passed by that place in the past. That place is quite suitable for you." At this moment, Xiao Ta's voice suddenly sounded out from the horizon. "Young master, don't go. If you go, you will probably become a little brother. Don't you want to continue acting cool here? Don't you want to be invincible?" Yi Xian instantly hesitated when he heard this. "Should I stay here for a while longer?" The green-robed man smiled and said, "What? Are you afraid?" Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. "I am naturally not afraid. I mainly want to develop for a while longer." The green-robed man smiled and said, "That is not a bad idea. However, you should know that only by fighting can you improve yourself. Right now, your strength has already reached the peak of this universe. If you continue to stay here, you will only be a weakling. Do you think this is interesting?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded. "Interesting." The green-robed man's expression froze. Yi Xian said seriously, "Father, Xiao Ta and I have decided to stay here for a while longer. We are not going anywhere." The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian and the smile on his face suddenly disappeared. "Are you going or not?" Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard this. Damn. This father is going to use force? Chapter 2154. Yi Xian's expression darkened when he heard the green-robed man's words. "My dad is going to send me away by force. Damn it. Why did I ask Xiao Ming to call me ancestor? Isn't this a trap of my own making? I'm such a pig head." At this moment, the green-robed man said, "I think you should go and train yourself." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, "I think?" The green-robed man suddenly shook his head. "I don't want you to think. I want me to think." Yi Xian's face stiffened again, and he looked extremely ugly. The green-robed man blinked. "Look at your expression. You don't seem convinced. If you don't like it, hit me. Kill this doppelganger of mine and you'll have the final say. Yi Xian, the green-robed man was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll go. The green-robed man was slightly stunned and then he smiled. Have you thought it through? Yi Xian nodded, yes. What's the point of being invincible in this place? I want to challenge. I want to challenge someone stronger than me. The green-robed man nodded, that's the right idea. Yi Xian suddenly said, but Dad, can I go a few months later? The green-robed man looked at Yi Xian, no. Yi Xian quickly said, a few months later I'll definitely go. The green-robed man smiled, don't say that to me because I don't believe your nonsense. Don't play any tricks on me. These are all leftovers from me. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta suddenly said in a trembling voice, Master, we're not invincible enough. The green-robed man looked at Xiao Ta expressionlessly, should I call you Tower Master? Xiao Ta, the green-robed man smiled, Xiao Ta, after you followed this guy, I found that your character has changed a lot. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment before he said, one is marked by the company one keeps. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man shook his head. Xiao Ta, do you want to come with me? Yi Xian's expression instantly changed when he heard this. This Xiao Ta was his cultivation artifact. He was just about to speak when beside him Xiao Ta suddenly said, Master, I'd better follow the young master. Young master is still young. If he goes out alone you will definitely be worried. If I follow him I can at least take care of him. Yi Xian was touched when he heard this. At this critical moment Xiao Ta was still very kind. Actually Xiao Ta had his own plans. If he followed Yi Xian, he would continue to be modified by heaven's will. The green-robed man nodded slightly. Then follow him. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian. 3 days. You must head to Heaven Burial Domain in 3 days. This isn't for you to show off. Your older sister seems to have caused some trouble there. Go deal with it for her. Yang Yanxue. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. Damn it. My older sister caused trouble, yet I have to deal with it? Who's going to deal with it for me? Even though he was furious, he didn't dare say anything. He couldn't defeat her. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Father, isn't this clone of yours here? Why don't you let this clone go? You're so strong. The green-robed man spoke indifferently, you seem to have a lot of questions. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man continued, is there a problem with a younger brother helping his older sister? Yi Xian laughed bitterly. Father, you don't care about older sister either. She often causes trouble and that's not good. The green-robed man's expression was calm. I don't care about you either, do I? Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man said, you have to go quickly because she seems to have used the strand of sword energy I left for her. She's probably in a very bad situation right now. If anything happens to her, I'll skin you alive. Yi Xian glanced at the green-robed man and couldn't help but say in his heart, damn it. I really want to ask Qing to beat you to death. The problem was that Qing might not be able to beat Father to death. Moreover, Father even formed a clique and hung out with Big Brother. The green-robed man suddenly said, are you cursing me in your heart? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No. The green-robed man chuckled. I know you're unhappy but you can't do anything to me. Hee. Yi Xian was speechless. The green-robed man chuckled and said, I'm not going to talk nonsense with you anymore. Remember, if you don't hurry to the burial god territory in 3 days, you'll have to bear the consequences. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned illusory. Yi Xian's expression was calm. Meanwhile, the green-robed man suddenly said, I'm leaving. You don't seem to be reluctant at all. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, I'm sad. The green-robed man roared with laughter. Kid, I hope you'll be able to take a blow from me the next time we meet. Otherwise it'll be too boring. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and opened his palm. The 3 strands of sword energy that Dong Linen had left for Yi Xian instantly flew out and fell into the green-robed man's hand. The green-robed man smiled. It's not a good habit to use external objects. I'll be taking these 3 strands of sword energy with me. Take care. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished completely. Yi Xian's expression was extremely ugly. Damn it. He's taken all the sword energy. Damn it. Isn't Father afraid that something might happen to me? Yi Xian's lungs were on the verge of exploding with rage. Xiao Ta suddenly floated over to Yi Xian, and he spoke with a trembling voice, Young Master, we're still unable to defeat Master. Yi Xian had a calm expression on his face after he calmed down. If we can't defeat him, then we can't. Continue working hard. One day we'll be able to defeat him. Xiaota spoke in a low voice. All right. Yi Xian turned around to gaze at the experts of the Profound Sword Immortal sect. At this moment, all the swordsmen were looking at him, and all the swordsmen had extremely strange expressions on their faces. They hadn't imagined that Yi Xian was actually the son of the Profound Sword Immortal sect's ancestor. What the fuck? He really gave birth to a son late. Yi Xian spoke indifferently. From this moment onward, I'm the sect master of the Profound Sword Immortal sect. Who objects? Who agrees? All the experts of the Profound Sword Immortal sect hurriedly expressed their agreement. They couldn't defeat Qin Shi, and their founding ancestor was Qin Shi's father. So, how could they possibly object? Just like that, Yi Xian had become the sect master of the Profound Sword Immortal sect. Yi Xian arrived at the Profound Sword Immortal sect's Profound Sword Hall. He glanced at it and said, "Change the name of this hall." Xiaoming hesitated for a moment and said, "Change it to what?" Yi Xian spoke indifferently, "Change it to the Hall of Acting Cool." Xiaoming was speechless. Yi Xian walked into the hall, and Yi Xian was instantly speechless upon entering it. His father's statue. The Profound Sword Immortal sect had a statue of his father as well. However, it wasn't outside but within the hall. Yi Xian glanced at the statue and he was instantly infuriated. "Remove it!" Xiaoming's face was covered in astonishment. "Remove? Remove it?" Yi Xian spoke indifferently. "Remove it immediately. Then replace it with mine." Xiaoming was speechless. Yi Xian turned around to look at Xiaoming. "Is there a problem?" Xiaoming hesitated for a moment and said, "Sect Master, are you serious?" Yi Xian spoke indifferently. "Do I look like I'm joking to you?" Xiaoming was speechless. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and then he turned around and left. It didn't take long for him to arrive at a side hall. This side hall was filled with the treasures of the Profound Sword Immortal sect. Yi Xian glanced at it and said, "Who do these treasures belong to?" Xiaoming replied, "They belong to the sect." Yi Xian asked again, "Who does the sect belong to?" Xiaoming hesitated for a moment and said, "Yours." Yi Xian nodded. "Wrap them up for me." Xiaoming was speechless. After putting away the treasures, Yi Xian strolled around the Profound Sword Immortal sect. In the end, he didn't find any treasures before giving up. In the sky above the Profound Sword Immortal sect, Yi Xian looked at Xiaoming in front of him. "This chaotic world belongs to us?" Xiaoming nodded. "Yes. We all absorb the chaotic energy from this chaotic world to cultivate." Chaotic energy. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. The next moment he felt endless chaotic energy. Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at Xiaoming. "Can I achieve an immortal body by absorbing this chaotic energy?" Xiaoming nodded. "Yes. But it's too little. In fact, this primal chaos force was even more helpful to powerhouses at the 6th level of the Cosmic Heart Realm. If they absorbed this primal chaos force, they would have a high chance of reaching the Sacred Heart Realm. But after reaching the Sacred Heart Realm, this primal chaos force wouldn't be as useful anymore. But there's no way around it. This Star God vein is too rare. Only the previous sect master had one? Yi Xian frowned slightly. The Profound Firmament sect has one? Xiaoming nodded. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and a storage ring appeared in his hand. He glanced at it. There was indeed a Star God vein in the storage ring. However, this Star God vein was about to dry up. It was about to be sucked dry. Yi Xian was speechless. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian looked at Xiaoming. "Where did he get this Star God vein?" Xiaoming shook his head. "I don't know the details." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Has this Profound Firmament sect ever left this place?" Xiaoming nodded. "Yes. 1,000 years ago, Sect Master Profound Firmament sect left the chaotic world. I don't know where he went. Anyway, when he came back he was already at the immortal body realm. However, since then he has never left." Yi Xian said softly, "In that case, this Xuanzang sect master must have obtained some kind of opportunity outside." Xiaoming nodded. "I think so." Yi Xian thought for a while and then absorbed a part of the chaotic force into Xiaota's body. This chaotic force was of great help to Tu Chen and the others as it could quickly improve their cultivation. With the addition of the chaotic force, Yi Xian found that Tu Chen and the others' aura skyrocketed. Of course, this was also because they had cultivated for a very, very long time. Glancing at Tu Chen and the others, Yi Xian's lips curled up. It wouldn't take long for Tu Chen and the others to reach the Sacred Heart Realm. 3 days. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on when he thought about going to the sky-burying god realm in 3 days. Why did he have to deal with the aftermath when his sister caused trouble? Speechless. At this moment, a swordsman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Xiao Ming. The swordsman bowed slightly. Sect Master, the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, Ambassador South, is here. Ambassador South. Yi Xian frowned. What is this woman doing here? The sword cultivator hesitated for a moment before he said, should we let her in? Yi Xian thought for a while and nodded. Let her in. The swordsman retreated. A moment later, Ambassador South came in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. You've become the sect master of the Mystic Sword Immortal Sect? Yi Xian nodded. Ambassador South was silent. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Ambassador South, what's the matter? Ambassador South hesitated. Can I open the primal chaos world? Yi Xian shook his head. No. Ambassador South looked at Yi Xian. You can't be so selfish. Yi Xian suddenly slapped her. Bah. Ambassador South was sent flying by Yi Xian's slap. Yi Xian looked at the southern ambassador who was sent flying. Did I give you face? After writing for 6 years, I realized that no matter how fancy I am, as long as I don't explode monthly votes, that's just a dream. Reality is cruel. Chapter 2155. Ambassador Nan was stunned after being slapped away. Why did Yi Xian attack her just like that? Most importantly, how could he be so strong? Ambassador Nan gazed at Yi Xian, hesitated for a moment and said, Young Master Yi, I know you're angry at me. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. You're wrong. Ambassador Nan gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian grinned. I was angry at that time. After all, I treated you as a friend. But I'm not angry anymore because I've repaid you. Just like I said, we're even. As for now, I'm indeed the sect master of the Dark Sword Immortal Sect, and this chaotic world belongs to the Dark Sword Immortal Sect. He paused for a moment before he continued, Why should I share the chaotic energy of this chaotic world with you? Who do you think you are? You're not my woman. Ambassador Nan was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly said, Elder Xiao, send her off. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Ambassador Nan suddenly said, Aren't you afraid that everyone will join forces against you? Yi Xian didn't even look back. If you dare to attack today, then the Immortal Treasure Pavilion will cease to exist tomorrow. Ambassador Nan's face turned ghastly pale. Elder Xiao gazed at her. Fuck off. The Dark Sword Immortal Sect was naturally aware of Ambassador Nan's schemes. However, they hadn't gone to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in the beginning. After all, they were quite afraid of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Of course, they were afraid of the mysterious Pavilion Master. However, the mysterious Pavilion Master hadn't made an appearance for 1,000 years. Now that he had Yi Xian, he wasn't afraid of the mysterious Pavilion Master at all. We have young Master Yi. Ambassador Nan remained silent for a long time before she turned around and left. How could she dare to resist? The weakest here was a Saint Heart, and she was the only Saint Heart in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. The gap in their strength was too huge. However, she couldn't figure out how Yi Xian had become the sect master of the Dark Sword Immortal Sect. Her original plan was to let the forces behind Yi Xian fight against the Xiansword Celestial Sect. After both sides suffered heavy losses, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion would take advantage of the situation. Now, Yi Xian had become the sect leader of the Mystic Sword Celestial Sect. The dragon-slaying teenager turned into a dragon? It might not be appropriate to say this, but she was indeed very depressed. Targeting Yi Xian? She really didn't have the guts. Even now, when he thought about the sword of the mysterious woman in the plain dress, he still felt his heart palpitate. At this time, the southern envoy suddenly stopped. She turned her head and looked around, a trace of confusion in her eyes. At this moment, she suddenly felt that the world was so unfair. Yi Xian managed to get what she had struggled for her whole life in such a short time. Thinking of this, Ambassador Nan's heart was filled with anger. She stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian, who was walking towards the Hall of Pretentiousness. I don't think it's fair. This world is too unfair. Yi Xian stopped and said softly, How can there be absolute fairness in this world? The southern envoy stared at Yi Xian. You're so lucky. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He turned to look at the southern envoy and said with a smile, What are you trying to say? The southern envoy's expression was calm. You're lucky to have an invincible younger sister. If it wasn't for her, how could a person with ordinary talent like you have come this far? If it wasn't for her, how could you have become the sect leader of the Mystic Sword Celestial Sect? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Miss Southern Envoy, we met because of good karma. Even after we settled our debts, I felt that we parted on good terms. I had no malice towards you, nor did I want to have malice towards you. But now you insulted me. He shook his head again. I'm not angry at all. I'm just a little disappointed. You're no longer the wise and far-sighted Miss Southern Envoy I met. The Southern Envoy stared at Yi Xian. Am I wrong? Yi Xian smiled. Of course you're wrong. If it wasn't for Qing'er, I would still have my father. Do you know who this Mystic Sword Immortal sect belongs to? It's my father's. The Southern Envoy's expression froze. Yi Xian said again. Miss Southern Envoy, if you think it's unfair, then you can recognize me as your father. This way you'll have a powerful backer. Hearing this, the Southern Envoy flew into a rage. You're insulting me. Before her voice fell, her pupils suddenly shrank. She wanted to retreat, but the next moment, a sword had pierced half an inch into her forehead. The Azure Profound Sword. The Azure Profound Sword directly suppressed the Southern Envoy's divine soul. The Southern Envoy stared at the distant Yi Xian. Your strength. Why are you so strong? Yi Xian smiled. I've always been strong. When I asked you whether you needed me to help you destroy the immortal Taoist temple, did you think I was bragging? The Southern Envoy's face was extremely ugly. She had thought that Yi Xian's strength was ordinary. She had never imagined that Yi Xian's strength was this strong. She had a sacred heart. But a sacred heart couldn't even fight back in front of Yi Xian? The Southern Envoy still wanted to say something, but the Azure Profound Sword completely absorbed her soul. Until her death, the Southern Envoy had never imagined that Yi Xian would really kill her. She died with everlasting regret. To Yi Xian, not killing her was his mercy, but it didn't mean that he wouldn't kill her. Yi Xian would repay kindness with kindness and enmity with enmity. The original kindness had been repaid. They were even. After Yi Xian returned to the hall, he learned about the Mystic Sword Immortal sect from Xiao Ming. There were more than 40 swordsmen in the Mystic Sword Immortal sect, all of whom had a sacred heart. Everyone's goal was the immortal body. There were also a few swordsmen who chose to focus on Sword Dao, and these swordsmen who specialized in Sword Dao were the strongest in the Mystic Sword Immortal sect. The Mystic Sword Immortal sect was very strong. However, he still didn't plan to bring these swordsmen to the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory, because he was too strong now. He wouldn't even be afraid of an eternal immortal body, let alone an immortal body. Therefore, after giving Xiao Ming some instructions, Yi Xian set off for the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory. Before he left Tu Chen and the others in the Mystic Sword Immortal sect because they had also reached the Sacred Heart Realm. In the Milky Way, Yi Xian shuttled back and forth on his sword. On the way, Xiao Ta suddenly asked, Young Master, will we become the younger brother when we go to the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Xiao Ta wanted to say something else, but Yi Xian suddenly said, Stop talking nonsense. We need to hurry. With that, his figure flickered and disappeared at the end of the Milky Way. His father had only given him a rough route, so he couldn't use the profound azure sword to directly travel to the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory. Heaven Burial Sacred Territory. The name didn't sound like a good place. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. He didn't know what trouble his sister had caused over there. He felt a little sullen at the thought. Why should the younger brother clean up the mess for the older sister? What AF asterisk kept up life? Half a month later, Yi Xian finally arrived at the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory. Yi Xian furrowed his brows as soon as he entered the Heaven Burial God domain. That was because he sensed a strong murderous intent and evil energy the moment he stepped into the Heaven Burial God domain. Yi Xian looked around. The air was filled with the smell of blood. Yi Xian was about to leave when an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the old man calmly. The old man smiled. Is this young master's first time in the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory? Yi Xian nodded, yes. The old man smiled. Greetings, young master. This old man is from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian was shocked. Celestial Treasure Pavilion? The old man nodded, yes. As he spoke, he took out a scroll. Young master is new here, so you're definitely not familiar with the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory. I have some information here that describes in detail the various powers and experts in the Heaven Burial Sacred Territory, as well as some dangerous places. Originally, it required 100 star veins, but now it only requires 88 star veins. 88 star veins. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Why don't you just rob someone? Won't I know everything you said after I ask around? The old man stroked his beard and smiled. Young master will naturally know the basic information once you ask around. However, some information can't be obtained just by asking around. For example, which places are dangerous, which people are dangerous, and so on. Yi Xian thought for a moment and then he said, "Give me one." As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and a spatial ring descended before the old man. The old man grinned and then he passed the scroll to Yi Xian. After Yi Xian put the scroll away, the old man took out another scroll and then he said, "Young master, this scroll describes in detail the cultivation realms and combat strengths of those dangerous people, and the danger level of those dangerous places. Do you need it?" Yi Xian's face froze when he heard that. Fuck. What a trap. What a trap. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "Give me one." As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and a spatial ring descended before the old man. The old man hurriedly put it away, and then he passed the scroll to Yi Xian. When Yi Xian put it away, the old man took out another scroll and then he said, "Young master, I can see that your strength is extraordinary, and ordinary experts shouldn't be much of a threat to you. My scroll records some relatively mysterious and extraordinary experts, and all of them are extremely formidable. I only want 180 star veins. Are you interested?" Yi Xian glanced at the old man. "Give me one." As he spoke, he flicked his finger, and then a spatial ring descended before the old man. The old man hurriedly put it away, and then he took out another scroll. "Young master, based on your expression, it should be your first time here. I presume you're either looking for the star-searching divine veins or someone. There are a few maps in this scroll and they record a few ruins. The weakest ruins belong to experts with eternal realm willpower. My immortal treasure pavilion is holding an event today, and I don't want 10,000 or 8,000. I only want 3,800 star veins. Are you interested?" Yi Xian nodded his head. "Yes." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a spatial ring fell in front of the old man. The old man was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He hurriedly put away the spatial ring and then he took out a token. "Young master, if you get a divine item or a star divine vein, you'll definitely be hunted down. This is a protection token. As long as you have this token, you can stay in my immortal treasure pavilion for a day. During this day, you'll be under the protection of my immortal treasure pavilion. Young master, the previous ones are not essential to you, but you must buy the last one. It's a life-saving token. It only costs 5,200 star veins, 5,200 star veins for a life. Is it worth it?" Yi Xian glanced at the old man. "It's worth it." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a spatial ring fell in front of the old man. The old man was so happy that his eyes were about to close. He hurriedly put away the spatial ring, and then he took out a piece of white cloth that was filled with words. "Young master, since you chose to buy a protection token, it's obvious that you're here to cause trouble. In that case, I have no choice but to recommend this for you." As he spoke, he said seriously, "This is a life insurance. If you buy this insurance, as long as you're in danger and injured, you'll enjoy free rescue from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. No matter where you are, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion will rush to your rescue in the shortest time possible. Also, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion will pay for all the medical expenses after you're injured. Apart from that, every time you're injured, you'll receive compensation from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. As for the amount of compensation, it'll depend on your injury. If you're unlucky enough to die in a battle, the Immortal Treasure Pavilion will compensate you tenfold. For example, if you spend 10,000 star veins to buy this insurance, you'll receive 100,000 star veins as compensation after you die. We'll give these to your family. Moreover, after you die, we will also bury you. We will handle your funeral in a dignified manner so that you can leave in style." Yi Xian. Chapter 2156. Yi Xian fell silent. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Fuck. He suddenly realized that he'd severely underestimated the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Meanwhile, the old man gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young master, based on your appearance, I can tell that you're here to cause trouble. If you take this risk, then you'll definitely make a profit." Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a command token appeared in his hand. The Dark Sky Token. The old man's expression instantly froze when he saw the Dark Sky Token in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian smiled. "Based on your expression, you should recognize this token." The old man suddenly put the white cloth away, and then he bowed slightly. I didn't know young master's identity just now. I was rude. Yi Xian smiled. What's the relationship between all of you and the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? The old man smiled. We're a family. However, everyone does things their own way. They're in charge of worlds with comparatively lower martial Dao civilizations, and we're in charge of worlds with comparatively higher martial Dao civilizations. Yi Xian was quite curious. Exactly how many families does your Celestial Treasure Pavilion have? The old man hesitated for a moment and then he shook his head. I don't know the specifics. Only the pavilion master knows. Yi Xian asked, Is your pavilion master here? The old man shook his head. She isn't. As for where she is, I don't know as well because I've never met her. The pavilion master of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian fell silent. She's really mysterious. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly withdrew all the spatial rings that Yi Xian had given him, and then he returned them to Yi Xian. Young master, you're the most distinguished guest of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and you enjoy all the rights of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Take these. Yi Xian put the spatial rings away and then he smiled. How many star veins do you earn every single day? The old man smiled embarrassedly. Not much. On good days, a few thousand star veins a day. A few thousand star veins. Yi Xian's expression froze when he heard this. Fuck. That's too profitable. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and said, Help me look for someone. The old man quickly said, All right. Yi Xian opened his palm and a painting appeared in his hand. It's her. The old man received the portrait and said, Young master, please wait a moment. It won't take too long, just 15 minutes will do. With that he turned around and left. 15 minutes. Yi Xian looked at the departing old man in silence. The strength of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was terrifying. At this time the old man appeared in front of Yi Xian again. The old man's expression was solemn. Young lord, we found this woman. May I ask who she is? Yi Xian said, My sister. The old man said solemnly, Your sister is in danger. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? The old man's expression was rather solemn. She's being chased by Burial Mountain right now. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Burial Mountain? The old man nodded. The strongest superpower in this world. Yi Xian's expression instantly darkened. This big sister is really good at causing trouble. The old man continued. Not only that, but according to what we know, she killed a young master from the land of the gods. She's being chased by two superpowers. Yi Xian's expression froze. The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Should we go save her? Yi Xian asked. What realm is the strongest person in these two powers? The old man said solemnly, Eternal. Eternal. Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. Even though he wasn't afraid of Eternal, it didn't mean that he could defeat eternal beings. After all, eternal beings could enter the river of time as well. This big sister. Yi Xian shook his head. The old man continued. Young master, if you want to save her, then you must rush over immediately because your sister's situation isn't optimistic. Yi Xian looked at the old man. Can I mobilize the experts of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion within my authority? The old man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was overjoyed. I want to mobilize your eternal immortal experts. The old man wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Xian frowned. Why? The old man smiled awkwardly. We don't. No. Yi Xian was shocked. Are you joking? You don't have eternal immortal experts? The old man nodded. Indeed we don't. If we do, young master can mobilize them. But we don't. Yi Xian, the old man smiled awkwardly. We are businessmen. We don't usually fight. Yi Xian said solemnly. If you don't have strength, how can you establish a foothold here? Didn't they rob you a long time ago? The old man smiled. The reason they don't dare to touch us is because our pavilion master almost killed them. Therefore, the ancestors of their forces have issued a death order not to provoke the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Mysterious Pavilion Master. Yi Xian fell silent. He was more and more curious about the mysterious Pavilion Master of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Of course, he was also troubled. Damn it. You have the right to mobilize our experts, but we don't have any experts for you. Holy shit. This Celestial Treasure Pavilion is really a deity. The old man hesitated. Young Master Yi, if you don't go, your sister will be in danger, Yi Xian said calmly. Don't worry. Even if I die, she won't die. With that, he turned and disappeared into the horizon. The old man hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, I haven't told you where she is. Yi Xian returned to the old man. Where? The old man said solemnly. In the Sukuan Sea. Go to the right and you will reach it. Yi Xian nodded. As if he thought of something, he suddenly said, Can I buy that personal accident insurance? The old man shook his head. No. Yi Xian was puzzled. Because I'm your VIP? The old man shook his head again. No. We will evaluate the risk when we sell it. Young Master Yi, our evaluation is that people like you are very dangerous and have a high chance of dying. Therefore we can't sell it to you. We are afraid of losing money. Yi Xian gave him a thumbs up. You specialize in making sure you don't lose money? You guys are awesome. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and transformed into a streak of sword light that vanished into the horizon. The old man was speechless. To Yi Xian, traveling 10,000 miles was just a matter of a snap of his fingers. After arriving at the Sukuan Sea, Yi Xian found that the scenery was quite beautiful. The seawater was clear like a mirror. He could see the bottom of the sea at a glance. When he arrived, it happened to be night time. Therefore, the sky full of stars was reflected in the sea. It was beautiful. After admiring it for a while, Yi Xian looked into the distance. The next moment, he disappeared from where he was because he had already sensed Yang Yanshua's aura. Soon Yi Xian saw Yang Yanshua. When he saw her, Yi Xian was stunned. At this time, Yang Yanshua was in a somewhat miserable state. Not only was there blood at the corner of her mouth, but one of her arms had been cut off. In addition, her aura was very weak, and her face was as pale as paper. She was seriously injured. Yi Xian frowned. Why was his sister in such a miserable state? Not far in front of Yang Yanshua stood an old man and a middle-aged man. Both of them had eternal will, and there were 10 people around them. These 10 people had eternal bodies. They had been ganged up on. Seeing Yi Xian, Yang Yanshua was overjoyed. She ran in front of Yi Xian and gave Yi Xian a big hug. Then she said excitedly, Brother, my dear little brother, I missed you so much. Yi Xian was speechless. In the distance, the old man and the middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian, and they frowned when they saw Yi Xian. They couldn't see through Yi Xian's cultivation. Yang Yanshua moved closer to Yi Xian and said softly, Brother, did you come alone? Yi Xian nodded. Yang Yanshua looked at Yi Xian. Where's father? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, He said he went to have fun. Yang Yanshua was stunned, and then she flared up with rage. That beast. Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Yanshua hesitated for a moment and said, Did he give you anything to save your life? For example, sword energy. Yi Xian shook his head. No. Yang Yanshua was astounded. Not even a strand of sword energy? Yi Xian nodded. Not even a strand of sword energy. Yang Yanshua hesitated for a moment and said, When I left, he gave me 5 strands of sword energy. Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Yanshua was slightly helpless. I used them all. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Brother, father didn't even give you a strand of sword energy? I seriously suspect that you're not father's biological son. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yang Yanshua said again, Can you be called Tianming? Yi Xian shook his head. Yang Yanshua's face darkened. Are you sure? Yi Xian was helpless. I'm sure. Yang Yanshua looked at Yi Xian. Then why did you come here? Yi Xian said indifferently, Father asked me to help you, but it seems like I can't help you with anything. Yang Yanshua's face fell. Yi Xian was slightly curious. Why did you fight with them? Yang Yanshua blinked and said, I found a mystic realm. There are many treasures in that mystic realm, and there are even star god veins. Yi Xian hurriedly said, How many? Yang Yanshua looked at Yi Xian warily. Not many, just 1 or 2. Yi Xian glared at Yang Yanshua. Why would they chase after you just because of 1 or 2? Are they crazy? Yang Yanshua hesitated for a moment and said, A dozen or so. Yi Xian said indifferently, Just how many? Yang Yanshua said, It's true, just a dozen or so. I can swear that if I'm lying, father will be hacked to death. The man in green was speechless. Yi Xian looked at Yang Yanshua. If you don't tell the truth, then I'm leaving. As he spoke, he turned and left. Yang Yanshua's expression changed drastically, and she hurriedly pulled on Yi Xian. Little brother, you're my biological little brother. Yi Xian said indifferently, What if it's fake? Yang Yanshua was speechless. Yi Xian said again, How many? Yang Yanshua hesitated for a moment and said, A few hundred. A few hundred. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched and he raised a finger. Half, give me half. Yang Yanshua jumped up. You're too ruthless. Too ruthless. Yi Xian said calmly, Then you can call me Dad. Let father save you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yang Yanxue hurriedly pulled on Yi Xian. Don't. We can talk, we can talk. Yi Xian looked at Yang Yanxue. Are you giving it to me or not? Yang Yanxue nodded. Yes. I'll give it to you. Yi Xian opened his right hand. Give it to me first, then I'll help you fight. Yang Yanxue hesitated. At this moment, the old man suddenly said, Your Excellency, are you going to interfere? Yi Xian glanced at Yang Yanxue and then said, I'm not interfering. You guys continue. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Yang Yanshua's expression changed and she hurriedly said, I'll give it to you after the fight. Yi Xian rolled his eyes. Big sister, we're all on the same side, so don't play tricks. Don't you have any idea what kind of character our family is? Yang Yanxue was speechless. P.S. I will definitely explode, but not now. This month is almost over. Can you guys vote for me first? I never go back on my word. After being together for so many years, you should trust my character, right? Chapter 2157. In the end, Yang Yanxue reluctantly gave Yi Xian a spatial ring, and there were 150 star god veins within it. After he put the spatial ring away, Yi Xian gazed at the old man who led the group. The old man said, Do you really intend to interfere in this matter? They were quite vigilant and fearful of Yi Xian, because they couldn't sense Yi Xian's strength. Yi Xian said with a serious expression, Of course I'm going to interfere. She's my older sister and blood is thicker than water. Bullying her is equivalent to bullying me. Yang Yanxue was speechless. The old man's gaze gradually turned icy cold when he heard Yi Xian. Kill? As soon as he finished speaking, the two Eternal Realm experts behind him charged at Yi Xian. However, he didn't attack. He wanted to probe Qin Shi's strength first. As soon as they moved, two rays of light pierced through their foreheads. Psst, psst. 2 strands of blood sprayed out. Instant annihilation. Moreover, it was instant annihilation. The expressions of the old man and middle-aged man instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. On the other hand, Yang Yanxue, who stood by Yi Xian's side, had a shocked expression on her face. Is this little brother that strong? Meanwhile, the old man spoke in a low voice. May I know who you are? Yi Xian smiled. All of you can attack me together. Attack him together. The expressions of the old man and middle-aged man instantly became unsightly when they heard this. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword appeared in his grasp. The old man's expression changed drastically when he witnessed this scene, and then he said, Let's go. Let's go. As soon as he spoke, the old man and the others turned around and vanished into the horizon. In the end, they didn't choose to go head-on against Qin Shi. Going head-on against Qin Shi might be pointless. After all, experts of such a level weren't existences that they could deal with. Yang Yanxue gazed at Yi Xian once she saw the old man and the others flee. She sized Yi Xian up and said, Little brother, how did you become so strong? Yi Xian said with a smile, That makes me strong? I didn't even use 10% of my strength in that sword strike just now. Yang Yanxue glared at Yi Xian. Don't pretend in front of me. Yi Xian laughed. Meanwhile, Yang Yanxue spoke solemnly, Brother, let's head to the ruins again. Yi Xian hurriedly said, You didn't take all the treasures from the ruins? Yang Yanxue shook her head. No. I didn't dare to go deeper because it's too dangerous. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he asked, How dangerous? Yang Yanxue glanced at Yi Xian and then she said, There's no danger with you here. Yi Xian was speechless. After Yang Yanxue recovered from her injuries, the two of them headed for the relic. Not long after, the two of them arrived at an island deep in the Void Kuan Sea. Yang Yanxue glanced at the surroundings and said, The Void Kuan Ocean isn't simple. We have to be careful. Yi Xian was a little curious. Sis, why aren't you with Dad? Aren't you able to get anything you want by following him? Yang Yanxue rolled her eyes. I have no freedom by his side. I can come out by myself and play however I want. Isn't that great? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, That's true. Yang Yanxue led Yi Xian to a huge stone door, but there was nothing behind it. Yi Xian asked, Is it inside? Yang Yanxue nodded. She walked over to the door and took out a white box. A stream of air slowly drifted out from within the box. Crack. Suddenly Yi Xian heard a sound, and then a white vortex appeared behind the door. Yang Yanxue hurriedly put the box away. Yi Xian was quite curious. Sis, what's in that box? Yang Yanxue smiled. Whitey's aura. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. Whitey's aura? Yang Yanxue nodded. It's very useful to use her aura to explore some ruins. Because some ruins are guarded by formations or barriers. Barriers and formations mean that they have a spirit, and if they have a spirit, then they'll fall for Whitey's trick. Yi Xian was speechless. The siblings entered the black vortex and a short while later, they arrived at a huge stone square. The square was a few kilometers wide, and there was a floating black hall not too far away from them. There were 2 words above the hall: Void Kuan Ocean Palace. Yang Yanxue said, I came here before and I obtained the star god vein from here. However, I wasn't able to enter the hall. Yi Xian asked, someone is guarding it? Yang Yanxue nodded. Very strong. Yi Xian looked at the hall and said, your box? Yang Yanxue rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. Whitey is useless against people. Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Yanxue continued, there was definitely a very strong sect here in the past, but it was destroyed for some unknown reason. There are definitely a lot of good things in that hall. We'll be rich if we can enter it. Yi Xian looked at the hall and then he opened his palm and Xiao Ta appeared in it. Xiao Ta hurriedly said, young master, what are you doing? Yi Xian said seriously, Xiao Ta, with your current strength, who can harm you in less than 3 strikes? Don't be afraid. Go. As he spoke, he suddenly tossed it towards the hall. Xiao Ta had just touched the hall when a ray of white light suddenly slashed Xiao Ta's body. Bang. Xiao Ta was instantly sent flying. Yi Xian opened his palm and Xiao Ta fell into his hand. At the same time he retreated a few dozen meters. Yi Xian looked at Xiao Ta, and he noticed that there were actually some cracks on Xiao Ta's body. Yi Xian looked at the hall and frowned slightly. Interesting. Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, you? Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll ask Qing to improve your strength the next time I see her. Xiao Ta immediately changed his words, young master, I'm willing to go through fire and water for you. Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Yanxue glanced at Xiao Ta and then she said, why has Xiao Ta become so fancy after being with you for so long? Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Yanxue said, do you have any other way? Yi Xian smiled, yes. Yang Yanxue hurriedly asked, what way? Yi Xian said, let's go in. As he spoke, he walked towards the hall in the distance. Yang Yanxue pulled on Yi Xian's arm and asked seriously, are you confident? Yi Xian nodded. Yang Yanxue hesitated for a moment and then she nodded, be careful. If you think it's dangerous, then we don't want it. In any case, Dad and Mom have bought a lot of assets for us and we have assets to inherit. Xiao Ta was speechless. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, do we have a lot of assets? Yang Yanxue blinked. You don't even know? Yi Xian's face darkened. Like hell I know. Yang Yanshua's expression became slightly strange. Yi Xian sighed softly, our family values women more than men. As soon as he finished speaking, he walked towards the hall in the distance. When he arrived before the hall, a ray of white light slashed over, and the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Bang! The green profound sword shield trembled violently, and it forcibly withstood the attack. After withstanding the attack, Yi Xian's figure trembled, and he directly entered the hall. However, the next moment he seemed to feel something and his expression changed. The next moment, bang! In the hall, following a muffled sound, Yi Xian was directly thrown out of the hall. Yang Yanxue hurriedly ran in front of Yi Xian, and she was a little worried, are you all right? Yi Xian shook his head slightly and he looked into the hall and said in a deep voice, there's someone alive inside. Alive. Yang Yanxue looked up at the hall in the distance and at this moment an old man slowly walked over. The old man wore a thick black robe and he was rather short, but his eyes were very sharp. The old man glanced at Yang Yanxue, and then looked at Yi Xian, swordsman. Yi Xian smiled, yes. After a moment of silence the old man said, your realm isn't high enough, but your strength is terrifyingly strong. You're someone who doesn't cultivate realm. Yi Xian nodded, yes. After a moment of silence the old man said, what are you doing here? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Senior, if I may ask, you are? The old man's expression was calm, I'm no longer here. What you see now is just a trace of my image. Image? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior is an expert above the eternal immortal realm. The old man glanced at Yi Xian, yes. Yi Xian smiled, Senior, to be honest, us brother and sister are here for the inheritance. Inheritance? The old man fell silent. Yi Xian asked softly, Senior left behind an inheritance, right? The old man nodded. Yes, but I'm afraid the two of you aren't suitable. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? The old man said in a deep voice, You're already so strong, why do you still need an inheritance? Hearing that, Yi Xian was instantly overjoyed. It was the first time he had been praised like this. In the past he was like a little brother to him. The old man said again, You're cultivating the boundless realm and I'm cultivating the existence realm, so it's not suitable for you. Moreover, you're so strong that even my main body might not be able to do anything to you. Also, the sword in your hand is extremely extraordinary, and the person who made this sword is definitely stronger than me. Therefore, my inheritance isn't of much use to you. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Senior, you've misunderstood. Although I'm cultivating the boundless realm, I'll use these realms as reference. If Senior is willing to give your inheritance to me, I'll definitely bring it to greater heights. The old man fell silent. You seem to be hesitating. Yi Xian said again, Senior, it's not that I'm boasting, but after today, it'll be difficult for you to find a super genius like me. Yang Yanxue couldn't help but glance at Yi Xian when she heard that. Can you be a little more shameless? Yi Xian was speechless. The corners of the old man's mouth couldn't help but twitch. Damn it, I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone so shameless. Yi Xian continued, Senior, look at me again. Were there many monstrous geniuses like me in your era? The old man hesitated for a moment and said, Not many. Yi Xian continued, Then do you think you'll be able to meet someone as outstanding as me? The old man glanced at Yi Xian and said, It'll be difficult. Yi Xian said seriously, Then what are you hesitating for? The old man said softly, You're good, but your skin is a little too thick. I'm afraid you'll ruin my reputation one day. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 2158. His reputation would be ruined. Yi Xian was instantly infuriated when he heard the old man. This geezer really doesn't know how to speak properly. Yang Yanxue couldn't help but chuckle when she saw Yi Xian being humiliated. The old man continued, Young brother, you're very strong, so you really don't need my inheritance. Moreover, our Daos are completely different, so my Dao isn't suitable for you. Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded, Then I won't force you. As he spoke, he glanced at Yang Yanxue. You've gotten lucky. Yang Yanxue chuckled, We're all family, so you've gotten lucky as well. Yi Xian puckered his lips and didn't say anything. The old man sized up Yang Yanxue and said, Actually, you aren't very suitable as well. Yang Yanshua's smile froze when she heard this. Yi Xian roared with laughter. The old man sighed softly, Both of you are very outstanding, but both of you really aren't suitable for my inheritance. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, Senior, then how long do you intend to wait? The old man fell silent, and his expression was quite dim. The two people before him were not bad, but it was a pity that they were not suitable for his inheritance. That was because he could tell that their origins were not simple, and the Daos they cultivated far surpassed his Daos. Thus, if he were to give his inheritance to the two of them, it would not be long before his inheritance would be eliminated by the two of them, and he would eventually disappear from this world. It wasn't that they weren't good, they were too good. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, how about this? Give your inheritance to me, and I'll find an heir for you in the future. The old man gazed at Yi Xian, You'll find an heir for me? Yi Xian nodded, Since both of us aren't suitable for your inheritance, then we'll help you find one. It's better than waiting here bitterly. What do you think? The old man pondered deeply for a long time before he nodded, All right. As he spoke, he opened his palm and a black scroll appeared in his hand. He looked at Yi Xian, and the scroll slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. My inheritance is in this. Yi Xian put the scroll away and said, Senior, aren't you afraid that I'll take it for myself? The old man laughed. Young friend, your great Dao far surpasses my Dao. You won't be interested in this level of inheritance. Yi Xian smiled and put away the scroll. The old man opened his palm and a storage ring appeared in his hand. He said, After I died, my life savings were all here. As he spoke, he glanced at the two of them. I'll give them to you. After that, the storage ring flew over to Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue. He knew that they'd definitely come to seek wealth. If he didn't give them some benefits, then his inheritance might be sold off by them. The corners of Yi Xian and Yang Yanshue's mouths raised slightly when they heard this. Yi Xian reacted swiftly and immediately put the storage ring away. Actually, they really didn't care much about this inheritance. What they cared about was wealth. Yi Xian was suddenly a little curious. Senior, as far as I know, powerhouses like you can be reborn even if you only have a wisp of consciousness left, let alone a wisp of your soul. Why did you? The old man smiled bitterly. You're right. Under normal circumstances, even a strand of consciousness can be reborn. However, I died an unnatural death. Yi Xian frowned slightly. An unnatural death? The old man nodded. When I was killed all those years ago, my future and present were severed. In other words, I was completely wiped out. So I can't be reborn. Even if I can be reborn, I'll still die. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Severed the present and future of that person? The old man smiled. Young friend, you should be able to do that as well. Yi Xian fell silent. He really did have that strength, but he'd overlooked it all this time. Now that he thought about it, he noticed that every single person he'd killed had been completely wiped out by him, and there wasn't any trace of life left in them. The old man continued, this strand of my soul was left behind at the very beginning. Otherwise we wouldn't have met today. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Senior, how strong was the person who killed you? The old man glanced at Yi Xian. Very strong. Yang Yanxue suddenly asked, how strong is very strong? The old man thought for a moment and said, I wasn't even able to resist a single attack from him all those years ago. Yi Xian suddenly asked, was it a swordsman? The old man shook his head. No. Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue exchanged glances. It wasn't a swordsman. Since it wasn't a swordsman, then it wasn't one of the three swords. After all, there were other extraordinary big shots besides the three swords in this world. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, Senior, can you tell me about that person? The old man stared at Yi Xian. It's best that you don't. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? The old man laughed bitterly. If I tell him about it, then he'll know right away. At that time both of you will be in danger. Yang Yanxue turned to look at Yi Xian. Are you afraid? Yi Xian replied with a question. Aren't you? Yang Yanxue hesitated for a moment and said, You seem to be quite strong now, so there's no need for us to be afraid. Yi Xian glared at Yang Yanxue. Do you think I'm your father? Even though he wasn't weak now, he wasn't Xiao Ta who would say that he was invincible under the three swords, and he would trade one for one above the three swords. Damn it. He'd been beaten up for so many years, so if he still hadn't improved at all, then wouldn't he have lived his life like a dog? Yang Yanxue puckered her lips and didn't say another word. Actually, she was quite afraid as well. If the old man really was very strong, then the two of them might really die here. The old man hesitated for a moment before he said, Even though I don't dare to say anything about him, I can give you a reminder. He always carries a small bamboo basket on his back. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when the old man's soul suddenly ignited, and then he vanished in the next moment as if he'd never appeared. Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue were dumbfounded when they witnessed this scene. He was perfectly fine, but he vanished just like that. Meanwhile, the space in front of them suddenly trembled slightly, and a mysterious aura was growing closer and closer. Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue looked at each other. The brother and sister were suddenly a little nervous. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Big sis, call me dad. Yang Yanxue spoke in a low voice. Go ahead. Yi Xian turned to look at Yang Yanxue. Don't tell me that you can't call him. Yang Yanxue nodded. You guessed it right, brother. Yi Xian's expression froze. That aura was growing closer and closer. Yi Xian's expression became solemn. Big sis, are you sure you can't call him dad? Yang Yanxue spoke in a low voice. Brother, why don't you bring up the rear? Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Damn it, you two idiots are still chattering here. Can't you just run away? Hearing this, Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue were stunned. In the next moment, Yi Xian took Yang Yanxue and vanished on the spot. Run away. Not long after Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue slipped away, a soft suddenly sounded from within the hall, and in the next moment the entire ruins turned into nothingness. Yi Xian and Yang Yanxue appeared on the surface of the ocean, and they heaved sighs of relief when they saw the ruins below them vanish without a trace. Yang Yanxue spoke in a low voice. It's really dangerous out there. Yi Xian glanced at Yang Yanxue. Big sis, I think you should go back and follow dad. Even though it isn't so free, it's safe. Yang Yanxue shook her head. Following dad is too boring. Moreover, Little White and Arya aren't here, so it's too boring. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then he said, Big sis, it's not impossible for you to live in the outside world, but can you become stronger? Yang Yanxue glared at Yi Xian. Do you think I'm a burden to you? Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. No. Yang Yanxue snorted and then she said, "Little brother, you can't be so narrow-minded. Even though I'm not very strong now, I've been with Dad for so many years and I still have some connections. I can help you in the future." Yi Xian curled his lips. "I don't believe you." Yang Yanxue suddenly spread out her palm. "Little brother, it's time to split the money." Yi Xian was a little confused. "Split what money?" Yang Yanxue said angrily, "That senior gave you all his savings just now. Why do you want to take it all for yourself?" Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Big sis, you don't have to worry about food and drink if you follow Dad and the others, but I?" Yang Yanxue suddenly said, "If you don't split the money, I'll speak ill of you in front of my aunts in the future, and say that you're fooling around outside." Yi Xian's expression froze and he hurriedly asked in his heart, "Xiao Ta, how will this affect me?" Xiao Ta was silent for a moment and then he said, "Very much." Yi Xian was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Lil Tower sighed in a low voice. "You're just letting them loose now, and the few matriarchs are all opposed to Master's actions. For example, Matriarch Ding from before. Didn't she help you before? Why did she help you? Because she is opposed to this kind of behavior. And little Nianxue is mainly going to ruin your reputation. Then in the future the other matriarchs will definitely strongly support Master to let you be. Not only that, but they will definitely not help you in the future. Most importantly, isn't your mother, who is also Matriarch Dongli, building up power for you all the time? How can she do that? There must be the help of other matriarchs in this." Speaking up to this point, it paused and then continued, "Do you know why Master gave me to you?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Didn't you take the initiative to follow me?" After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, "Young Master, you're shameless. You even lie to yourself. I really have to give it to you." "Yi Xian," Xiao Ta said, "the reason why Master gave me to you was because of Matriarch Su's request. Matriarch Su is little Master Nianshue's biological mother. Back then, she was afraid that you would have a hard time outside, so she asked Master to give me to you." At this moment, Yi Xian said in a low voice, "First of all, I thank Auntie Su for her kindness, but Xiao Ta, touch your conscience and tell me, after you followed me in the early stages, other than acting cool and bragging, what else can you do? If it wasn't for Qing'er who changed you a little, I would have thought that my father sent you to make my life more difficult." Xiao Ta. P.S. I've already saved a lot of scripts now. I'll wait for a good day to explode. Prepare your tickets. When I explode, I won't be human. Are you afraid? Chapter 2159. Yang Yanxue glared at Yi Xian when she saw him remain silent for a long time. Split the money? Yi Xian restrained his thoughts, glanced at Yang Yanxue and then sighed softly. After that, he withdrew a spatial ring and passed it to Yang Yanxue. Yang Yanxue instantly beamed when she glanced at it. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Big sister, I traveled so far to save you. Don't you have anything to show me?" Yang Yanxue gazed at Yi Xian and said seriously, "Brother, if you think like that, then you're really narrow-minded. Don't pursue the benefits that are in front of you. You have to set your sights on the long term in the future. Understand?" Yi Xian shook his head and felt a slight headache. Right at this moment, both of them suddenly turned around and saw numerous powerful auras sweep over from the horizon. The siblings furrowed their brows. Yang Yanxue hurriedly walked over to stand behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, 6 people appeared in front of Yi Xian. The person in the lead was an old man. The old man had white hair, an emaciated face, and a gaze that was sharp like the edge of a blade. Yang Yanxue hurriedly said by Yi Xian's side, "They're from Mount Burial." Mount Burial. Yi Xian glanced at the old man and didn't say anything. The old man stared at Yi Xian. "Tell me who your backer is." Yi Xian was slightly stunned and then he said, "What do you mean?" The old man's face remained emotionless. "Your backer decides our attitude towards you." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, 3 strikes of the sword." The old man frowned slightly. "I've never heard of it." Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. He attacked right away. Yi Xian's face darkened. Right at this moment, the old man suddenly vanished mysteriously. In the next moment, the space and time here suddenly distorted, and then countless needle-like beams of white light shot towards Yi Xian like a storm amidst the distorted space and time. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword transformed into a sword shield that blocked in front of him. Bang! Boom 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 boom. Numerous explosions resounded incessantly in space. In the next moment, Yi Xian retreated explosively. Before he could stop, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head. At the moment he raised his head, a giant hand came crashing down like a mountain. It was not an ordinary giant hand. The giant hand contained powerful space-time energy and undying energy. Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword suddenly soared into the sky. Boom. After being struck by the green profound sword, the giant hand trembled violently before cracking apart. Right at this moment, an afterimage suddenly appeared in front of him. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly as he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Boom. An expanse of sword light suddenly shattered. In the next moment, Yi Xian's figure was blasted flying at an extremely swift speed. In the blink of an eye, he'd moved over 30 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped moving, the space he resided in had suddenly transformed into an enormous black vortex. The terrifying black vortex was suffused with a terrifying suction force, and countless strands of suction force were madly tearing at his body. At the same time, the old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and a wisp of ferocity flashed through his eyes. Die, old man. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his right fist and smashed it forward. Bang. At the instant that he punched forward, an expanse of golden light suddenly swept out from his fist. The golden light contained countless strange and tiny symbols, and every single one of them represented a law, and each law represented a Tao. Yi Xian's expression instantly turned unsightly when the old man punched forward. Damn it. This old man is at the eternal immortal realm. He concealed his cultivation just now. This burial mountain is really amazing. He actually sent an eternal immortal realm expert directly. Wouldn't it be normal for him to send a few weaker ones to let me practice? Yi Xian didn't dare to think too much about it. When facing this punch, he didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. He didn't choose to defend himself, and he took a step forward and stabbed forward with his sword. The attack was very calm as water. However, the expression of the old man who was right next to him changed drastically. His pupils shrank to the size of needles in an instant, as if he had encountered something terrifying. In the next moment, the fear in his eyes turned into madness. Then let's die together. As soon as he finished speaking, he used all the strength in his body and punched forward. In an instant, golden light that was like the scorching sun caused the entire expanse of space to seethe. Bang! Yi Xian's entire body was blasted away like a kite that had its string cut. Moreover, strands of strange golden light flickered around his body, and with every strand of golden light, Yi Xian spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Finally, after retreating for hundreds of thousands of meters, Yi Xian finally stopped, and when he did, his face was ghastly pale. Yi Xian lowered his head to look at his body. Arya's battle armor was still there, and there was nothing wrong with it. However, there was a huge problem with his physical body. He was heavily injured. The battle armor was powerful, but his physical body wasn't. It had to be said that Yi Xian's expression was slightly solemn. If Arya's battle armor hadn't blocked most of the force, he would have died under this punch. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the old man in the distance. At this moment, the old man's body was gradually becoming illusory. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Slash the future. You can actually return to the past and slash the future. Yi Xian nodded. That's right. After a long silence, the old man said, Why haven't you been erased by the law of time? Yi Xian said, Do you know the Time Master? Hearing this, the old man's pupils suddenly shrank. You know the Time Master? Yi Xian nodded. That's right. The old man said in a trembling voice. I just asked if you have a backer. Why didn't you say that this is the Time Master? If you had said that, even if the old man had 10,000 guts, the old man wouldn't have dared to attack you. Yi Xian glanced at the old man. The three swords are much more powerful than the Time Master. The old man's expression froze. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Is the Time Master very powerful? A trace of confusion flashed in the old man's eyes. That's a godlike existence. A godlike existence. Yi Xian fell silent. Did he underestimate the Time Master's strength? In truth, he couldn't be blamed. It was the Time Master who was too humble. When he first met the Time Master was kneeling. Of course, he neglected one thing, and that was the Time Master wasn't kneeling to him, Yi Xian. At this time, the old man in the distance disappeared completely. Erased. Watching the old man disappear, Yi Xian fell silent. He realized that he had underestimated the eternal immortal realm expert. With his current strength, although he could kill an eternal immortal realm expert, the old man could kill him too. If he hadn't hurriedly activated the second battle armor, his soul would have been obliterated. Eternal immortal realm. Xian took a deep breath. It seemed like he had to reach the mortal body realm as soon as possible. The current him had the divine star veins. It wouldn't be a problem for him to reach the mortal body realm. At this time Yang Yanxue walked up to Xian. She glanced at Xian and asked, "Are you all right?" Xian chuckled bitterly, "What do you think?" Yang Yanxue hesitated for a moment, and then she opened her palm. A white pill appeared in her palm, and before Xian could react she placed the pill into Xian's mouth. As soon as the pill entered his body, Xian's body instantly recovered. In an instant, Xian was stunned. He had the body of defiance and possessed the terrifying undying bloodline. Therefore his body's self-recovery speed was extremely terrifying. However, even so, it still required a certain amount of time. Yet, this elixir allowed his shattered physical body to recover in an instant. Xian looked at Yang Yanxue with astonishment. "Big sister, that pill was?" Yang Yanxue spoke indifferently. "Father left it for me. Didn't he give it to you?" Xian's face froze, and he felt like a knife had been stabbed in his heart. "You did? Like how?" An indescribable flame of rage arose in Xian's heart. Not to mention a pill, father didn't even give him a single strand of hair. Moreover, he'd even taken 3 strands of sword chi from him. He really isn't human. Meanwhile, Yang Yanxue suddenly said, "What's wrong?" Xian sighed softly and didn't say anything. Yang Yanxue hesitated for a moment and said, "Are you angry at father?" Xian shook his head, "No." Yang Yanxue puckered her lips, "Why not?" As she spoke, she withdrew a white jade bottle and passed it to Xian. "This is for you." Xian glanced at it. "What is it?" Yang Yanxue said, "Medicinal pills. I have 5 left. I'll give you 3 and keep 2 for myself." Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "Big sister, I'm not used to you suddenly being so nice to me." Yang Yanxue glared at Xian. "Do you want it or not?" Xian promptly put away the white jade bottle. "Of course I want it." Yang Yanxue rolled her eyes at Xian then said, "Little brother, do you think that Burial Mountain and the God's Land will drop the matter?" Xian calmly said, "Let's go and find them." Yang Yanxue looked at Xian. "Go and find them?" Xian shrugged his shoulders. "Of course we're going to find them. I don't like to be passive." Yang Yanxue hesitated for a moment then said, "Can you defeat them? They should have eternal immortal realm powerhouses." Xian smiled. "I can't defeat them." Yang Yanxue frowned. "You can't defeat them but you still want to go?" Xian blinked. "They don't know that I can't defeat them." Yang Yanxue was speechless. He brought Yang Yanxue to Burial Mountain. Not long after, the brother and sister arrived at Burial Mountain. As soon as they arrived at Burial Mountain, more than 10 divine consciousnesses locked onto the brother and sister. Yang Yanxue promptly stood behind Xian. At that time Xiaota suddenly said, "Little master, little mistress Nianshua's strength is so weak, so why are you bringing her?" Xian smiled faintly and said in his heart, "Xiaota, let me ask you, what is elder sister's status in the family?" Xiaota was silent for a moment then said, "Compared to you, the difference is like heaven and earth." Xian furiously said in his heart, "I didn't ask you to compare her to me. If you don't know how to speak then don't say it." Xiaota was speechless. Xian took a deep breath and said, "Elder sister's status in the family is so high, so do you think that father will let anything happen to her?" Xiaota said in a low voice, "He won't. If something happens to little mistress Nianxue, master will definitely panic. He is very afraid of matriarch Su." Speaking up to this point he paused and then said, "With little mistress Nianxue around she will definitely be fine. In that case she is equivalent to your protective talisman. Asterisk Sike. Little master, you even betrayed your own elder sister. You are really inhuman. But I like it." Yang Nianxue looked at Xian, not saying anything, and her expression was very cold. Xian suddenly said, "Xiaota, did you forget to soundproof your words?" Xiaota was speechless. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."